Hello. Hopefully, everyone is doing well. We've got got a little bit planned today. I feel like it's going to be more. It'll be more of a chill stream to kind of start out with. I am like almost over my sickness at this point, so that's good. And I have a feeling later on, when this gets, let me hold on. I need to turn on streamer mode so I don't get a bunch of pings. There we go. And then set up in the background to check to make sure everything is actually going out. Pings. There we go. All right. It's going to be on. I have a little bit of a delay still set up. I forgot to fix that. I'll fix it by next stream so that like when y'all chat or whatever, I'll get it instantly. Oh, thanks Kyle. I like the hat too. I think it's adorable, and I'm actually wearing it because I'm going to later on, after I do some gaming for a little bit, we are going to talk about the failure of Christian morality, and I'm going to talk about God. And so I'm going to have this is my atheist hat. It's my little goat hat with the little pentagram on it because I know I'm going to cut this video into a segment and they're going to get really upset about it because I've got a lot of thoughts about this. I'm going to just lay out and lambast into Christian morality and the idea of like Christian ethics entirely. I think Christian ethics are absurd, and I'm getting tired of Christians pretending that like they have ethics. Like it's because the last couple times, like I listen to some atheist content and some shows and stuff like that, and like I get tired of Christians calling in and being like, oh, but what about morality? Like you don't have morality. Like Christians have morals and atheists don't have any morals to fall back on. And I'm just getting tired of hearing that. So I'm just going to like lay in to Christian ethics and their God. And I'll make it clear that like, I'm not saying this about Christian people. I don't think this about all Christians. I think in general, like Christians themselves usually have a moral standard that is higher than their deity. Still have a cough, still getting over the sickness. It's lingering, but we're almost recovered. And that's kind of like what I was wanting to do. I was going to do some chill gaming and stuff for a while. Just want to take a break from the Epstein stuff tonight. Probably not do like much politics. Like there is still political stuff going on. There's still political stuff to talk about. I just don't want my channel to become like only politics. And I am afraid that that's kind of like where it was coming, especially if I'm just saying the same stuff that a lot of other people are hearing that you're listening to if you watch other political content. I want to add like my own stuff. I want to entertain you in my own way. I like World of Warcraft. I like doing gaming streams. I want to play games. I want y'all to enjoy gaming with me. I'm a writer. I write a lot of books. I've got a book coming out pretty soon, and I'm going to like do a lot of like more writing content and focus on like creativity and things that like I'm doing myself. There's also trans stuff. There's lots of trans issues to talk about. And you're saying like ethics have no relevance without action and practice in any space. I mean, I, I agree that you should always like, if you're practicing whatever you're doing, like you should do so ethically and with virtue. I agree with that for sure. It's just, I feel like Christians want to pretend that they're the only ones that have virtue or that have ethics when most of them have divine command theory is all that they have. They don't actually have any, like, their deity definitely is like one of the most evil pieces of shit in all of fiction, which is just wild that like one of the world's largest religions is built off of a deity that just is apparently so wicked and evil. And we can get into that for sure. Or if people start watching, get upset, and they want to join me to try to argue or debate this, that's fine too. But I'm going to make that will be its own segment. It's probably going to be pretty long. It's probably going to be like 30 minutes or an hour of me just ranting about God, because I'm going to cut it and post it as a individual video. I'm just tired of it. I'm tired of hearing, oh, what about Christian ethics? What about Christian ethics? So I want to like cut out that little video eventually so that I can just send it to people, or people can just view it if they want to hear like why I think Christian ethics are a joke. Why I think like no ethically serious person ought get their ethics or their ethical framework via Christianity. It just doesn't make any sense. And I already know that they're going to say that like I'm doing the work of the devil, or that I'm blasphemous, or that I'm evil, or whatever. So I put on the hat. It's my trans colored, my it's my little goat hat, and I've got the little pentagram on it, and it's trans colors. So I really I really like it. The blood magic cult wants to levy a complaint that we are evil while they pray to a deity that allegedly drowns babies out of space. Oh yeah, we're going to cover all of, like, I'm telling you right now, this is just funny, okay? God appears in the Epstein files something like 22,000 times. If you search the Epstein files for God, it shows up all over the place, which is like, I'm sure it's just like people mentioning it in passing. It's just hilarious that, that's a thing. Thanks. I like the hat too. I just thought it was funny that God's in the Epstein files. I'm like, oh, of course he is, But we'll get to that because I'll probably title the segment something like God is in the Epstein files, just as like just something to kind of like get people's attention. But I hope they take it serious and they actually will watch the thing like fully from beginning. Well, I mean, yeah, if you search on the website, if you go and get on there, you can search for specific names in the files. And I'm saying that, it appears like 22,000 times. I'm sure people are just like, God bless you, or, God help us, or whatever the hell. I'm sure that's actually what happened, but it just seems funny that like, that if God was a real person, he would be like one of the ringleaders of the Epstein files. Like he would be like the boss over Epstein and like organizing this stuff easily. Like if you were not an Israelite, the Christian God seems like he hates you pretty bad and doesn't really care what happens to you. Yeah, but I do want to offer, some entertainment beyond just talking about like Epstein stuff. So I'm going to be gaming for a little bit. If y'all want to just like watch me run some time walking and just watch my monk like kick some butt, I want to have some fun with that. I know some people don't really like gaming and stuff, but I want to do some gaming first, and then after I game for a little bit, we're going to talk about God. And unless y'all really want to just get into the God stuff now, in which case I can do the God segment first, and then I can like wind down later on with some gaming. I just don't really feel like jumping right into heavy content, but I don't know if it depends on what everybody wants, just because I think it's going to be like it'll be a pretty entertaining segment, I'm pretty sure. And like there's other stuff going on. I went and got like some blood tests that I need to get done simply because of like my hormone levels, and I got to get that stuff checked out. I'm getting older, so doctors just checking other things. It just happens. I will say that the financial system, like for medical care in America, like absolutely sucks. Like if you're wealthy, then yeah, you can have access to like the best healthcare in the world. I saw an interesting post. Almost no Scientologists appear in the files. Think that if we know, think that is if we know that they do some shady stuff. So that would be kind of weird. But at the same time, it depends on like, they're kind of running their own little racket. Like Scientologists have their own like money farm cult going on. like it would be surprising that absolutely none of them, like Tom Cruise, like not a single one of them would have any interactions with them. But there have been some people that where you would think like someone's name appears in the file, and then you read it and it ends up being that like they actually told Epstein to like go fuck himself. Like I don't know if y'all saw Finkelstein. Finkelstein was in the file, but Finkelstein basically they tried to approach him to like invite him to like some party that was going to have like Epstein and like some of his other known associates with it, and Finkelstein was literally like, "Go fuck yourself," and was like, "What is this like a collection of the world's most like egregious pedophiles?" And then followed it up with threatening to strangle him by saying like, "Let me ask you, if it was your 14-year-old daughter and somebody sex trafficked them, like wouldn't you you know put your hands around their neck and throttle them the moment you had the first opportunity?" And they were just like, "Yeah, so this guy doesn't like Jeffrey," you know. It's just like Finkelstein is so based. But you know, Scientologists are just like one group of people that what I with what's come out in the file so far, I think that you know, a connection that I would be surprised of personally is if none of these TERFs that are in the UK, if none of the like heads of those movements had anything to do with it, that would be shocking to me. Just because the fact that like Steve Bannon and you know met with Moot 4chan and essentially came up with this idea of like a culture war thing and came up like with the direction to like you know get the anger of young men like riled up and then like focus on culture war issues, including like going after trans people and like making trans issues a big focus in our culture, which is why like so many of these people were talking about it. If you wonder like why were so many people talking about trans issues that don't affect their lives at all, like we're such a small portion of the population and we affect like almost nothing just because like there's so few of us. And it's like yet a lot of these right-wing chuds were like heavily focused on these issues, and it's like why? Oh yeah, I saw that Rebecca Watson was in the files. Yeah, because Lawrence Krauss emailed Epstein for advice and how to respond to her questions about some allegations against him. I saw that. I also saw that you know, Peggy Siegel, who is a well-known like publicist, ran a lot of defense for Epstein, including like giving him advice in how to like, you know, go after people or silent celebrities and stuff that might talk against him. But the Rebecca Watson thing is wild, right? That's the was it Skepchick on YouTube, and just because she was calling out Krauss and like other like you know larger name atheists for like their involvement with like sexual assault and that type of thing, or like being accused of it, like they literally are reaching out to Epstein for advice and how to deal with her. It's just wild. Yeah, Watson is based. Just can you imagine that? That would be like if I found out later on, like having like no real presence or anything, but if I end up making some videos on J.K. Rowling, and then like later on they're like, oh, J.K. Rowling reached out to Epstein and like how to deal with like Zoe Vext. I'd be like, what? Really? Like a YouTuber? But you know, a lot of these guys like are so fragile they cannot stand the idea of people calling them out. And I thought it was wild that you know Richard Dawkins was wrapped up in that as well. Richard Dawkins also had said that he had, you know, heard things about Jeffrey, but one of his contacts had said that, you know, that the claims were exaggerated. So then Dawkins requested information because he doesn't think that the claims about Jeffrey are as black as they initially appeared. So you end up having people that, you know, just seem like, oh, well, because they just, you know, doubt women, and they are so quick to believe men that, you know, they're participating in what I don't know, maybe that you would call as like a rape culture, you know? But if you call it that, if you actually name it, then they're, you know, then they have an issue. Then all of a sudden people don't want to hear it, or they think that you're exaggerating. And like, I want to be clear. I hope that people, when they watch my content, this is what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid of that if I just call things what they are and I just label them correctly, like this is like all part of, you know, this other issue, then people are not going to want to hear it because they're so indoctrinated to resist, like, oh my God, there's, you know, feminist rhetoric or whatever. Like they hear something and they think like this is rhetoric that like a feminist would say, therefore it must not be true. And I don't want to like activate that defensive part of their brain so that they're not going to be willing to even like hear me out on things. But on the other side, I know people are like, well, if you just describe the concepts, but you don't name them specifically. And that just feels like, why do we have to play this game with them? Like, why are people so defensive and hesitant about this stuff? Like, if you accurately name what's going on, all of a sudden, like, that's going to turn people off and they're not going to want to hear it. That just seems very strange to me. Damn, how hard is Felsight to find? It just gets annoying. It's like, well, you can talk about it, just don't actually name it. You know, the same thing like if you bring up trans issues, whatever, a lot of people just like turn it off or stop listening. I also saw people like mocking trans people that were like, hey, there's, you know, this invitation for Harry Potter and the Cursed Child that like Epstein was requesting getting access to, and like we should look into this, whatever. Then there's people that are just like, lol, trans people are so always obsessed with J.K. Rowling, and I'm just like, okay, Rowling has like, you know, mocked women openly that have been like, you know, accusing men of assault. She's buddied up to people that were on the right that were known associates of Epstein. Like, and then having her name appear in the files, like, why wouldn't you want to know? Unless it's the fact that all you hear is like, oh, well, you know, Rowling and it's a trans person, therefore just ignore it and it must not be true. Like the amount of defense mechanisms in some of these people's brains is just wild. And they'll accuse like every single part of some minority community of being part of some secret like pedo cult or whatever, which is what they were labeled LGBT people. Then they'll turn around and, you know, try and make excuses for people that had associations and ties to other folks tied to Epstein. It's just wild. And I said I wasn't going to do a bunch of politics, but yet here we are still talking about politics. But I did want to talk about the like atheist stuff a bit as well. And like, I don't know. It's very frustrating that in our culture, it's like if you are an atheist, you don't have morality or you don't have ethics. But you know, Christians certainly do. And I'm just like, no, y'all have divine command theory. That's all y'all have. And if they thought it, you know, when you point out in the Bible that God sex trafficked people, that God commanded the like sexual abuse of children, that God commanded like the cannibalism of people, that God personally drowned and murdered children and babies himself, they'll make every single excuse they can for this because it's the same kind of like phenomenon. Maybe MAGA is like some type of like weird cult. And I used to hesitate like labeling it that way, but it genuinely just feels like when you see like the way that they defend ICE, that you know, the way that they go after, like they have this like hatred of people of color, they hate you know, immigrants, no matter if they are here legally. Like it is a cult. And it's like, if Trump says something is good, then it's good. If Trump says something is bad, then it's bad. Like, it's so wild that they got so wrapped up into this, and all part of some scheme of like, you know, Epstein's connection with Bannon, and then Bannon's you know, connection with Moot and 4chan, so that all these like 4chaners and stuff like that that were like stirring up the culture war, they literally were running defense for a pedophile, while 4chan was used endlessly to target people, and then sites like Kiwi Farms and stuff is like doxing people and, you know, going after anybody that would like dare speak out about this stuff. It's just wild that like there's so much of this stuff that is that seems like it's all connected, not in a Alex Jones kind of conspiracy way. Because I want to like make sure that something is clear on this, because like I've talked a lot about this and feel like to some extent some people are like, oh well, Alex Jones was right, this is what he was talking about the entire time. Alex Jones wasn't right about shit. Alex Jones was like completely conspiracy brained, talking about like made up nonsense, Pizzagate and all that shit, all of that stuff was misinformation produced by Bannon and his team, and then like like recycled through the mouth of people like Jones, completely like making up stuff. The things that happen to these victims is like real. It's not some conspiracy movie. It's not like demons are going after people and making them do these things. Like Jones came up with all sorts of bizarre crisis actors and all this stuff like that. None of the conspiracy shit that Jones was talking about is accurate in that sense. It's only like ironic that the people that Jones was defending and claiming that they were going to be the ones to take this stuff down and go after people, that they end up being the ones that are actually involved with a group that is, sex trafficking people, because sex trafficking happens. Like, people are abused in this way. And I just want to make sure that, like, there's no misconception. Like, well, maybe Jones was right about any of this stuff. No, he wasn't. So you don't think that we have to necessarily cave to it? In fact, you think that it gives it justification, but it's undeniable that we have to push our ideas uphill, whereas all right-wing ideas aren't resisted. Exactly. Like, just think about for a second, like Andrew Tate and the crimes that we know that he committed, like what was going on like with him and his brother and everything else, and how the right wing just continuously, the manosphere essentially tried to like whitewash his reputation and just pretend that like, oh, he's just some base Chad that, the government's trying to take down and all that type of thing. But then like, if he was a leftist, or he, was a member of a minority community that like this group of people like despise, then like there'd be no chance that he'd be rehabilitated in any sort of way, shape, or form. It's like you're innocent until you're innocent without any evidence that's needed if you're like a minority that they despise. But if you are on their side, then they're going to endlessly defend you. Like they'll come with every reason imaginable to make it seem like you're just the victim of some type of like witch hunt or whatever. And that's why like when we were saying things like believe women, and like the Me Too movement and stuff, that was all about believing them that something happened, that like they had some experience that's worth investigating. I don't understand why people took that to think like, oh, well, we're saying that like, every single man, every accusation is just automatically true. It's like that's not what was being said. Like, ever. Not even once. I finally got a dungeon. Doing some time walking, and it's all about, like, they're doing, like, Shadowlands dungeons again in this. I didn't feel like tanking, so I was like, oh, I'm just gonna go and, play on my my DPS for a little bit. I don't know. I just get very frustrated with the idea of, like, the way that all this has been portrayed, and the people running defense for it. It's just unbelievable that we ended up having all this crap happen, and it's like not a single person has even been charged on it. which just seems like the most absurd thing that I could imagine with it. Gotta kill this giant golem. I don't know. I just felt like taking a break and doing like some more relaxing content tonight. Like the last couple streams, last stream I was supposed to be like, oh, I'm gonna relax and not do like as heavy politics. And then like the entire stream, I ended up just doing like politics the entire time. Huh. Paladins. I'm not sure how I feel about that move. Like, I don't mind jumping, like, through people. I can just see it, like, causing a problem later on, especially in dungeons. I feel like overshooting and, like, leaping into the next group of enemies, you know? You just have to be careful with, like, how hard you push it. I'm sure people are more like... We want to talk about the, Do I think Arthas was right? About what? I wouldn't even understand like what you're getting at there. I don't think Arthas was making an argument for anything. Arthas was like kind of a mind whammied idiot. Unless you're just looking to talk because I'm, you know, it's relevant to the game. Silenced. So dumb. I'm a little... I like having, like, a little goblin, you know? And I gave her blue hair, too. Just because. Silence that. Not going to fear anything. Yeah, it was Arthas Maga. Arthas, like, would certainly be, like, Maga for sure, you know? He has a little death cult. And, like, so many MAGA people do, like, say stuff unironically, like, you know, Arthas was right, or... I saw this whole thing... Actually, you know what? So when I play Affect the Village, you made the decision to say the whole town rather than wait for them to wake up. Yeah, no. So, I was about to say, if you meant, was he right about the culling of Stratholme, then no, I don't think he was. Because there's... The issue with it is that, like, you know, he sacrificed everything... No, he was MAGA. He was definitely conservative, 100%. He wasn't progressive by any means at all. And you can tell this because he had no virtue. He's supposed to be a paladin, right? I'll make the case of why he's MAGA. So, he's supposed to be virtuous, and he's supposed to be, like, out for his kingdom and looking out for his people and stuff like that. Just like MAGA claim that they support their people and all this stuff, right? But then look at, like, what he actually does, you know? Did our tank die or something? Like, they... Yeah, okay, they all died. They got feared. I'm just gonna run back. Fuck it. I'm fast enough. This is why I should have been the tank, right? So the case that Arthas is MAGA, all right? So Arthas was like obsessed with like fucking like holy orders and stuff like that. He's a paladin. He is like, raised by, Uther, Lightbringer, whatever. But Arthas himself like seems like he was kind of like a fake holy man, in the same way that like MAGA just view their god as like something that's like divine retribution against their enemies and stuff. Arthas was like way more vicious and aggressive than like a paladin should be. He's also a rich son of a politician that was like an influential politician. He's literally a prince, so he has all of this like entitlement and everything. And then when it came to defending his own people, he claimed that he's going to defend them and protect them and essentially make Lordaeron great again. But what he ended up doing was like hurting them and killing them instead. And his policies, as part of like the best policies he could come up with to protect them, is to like kill them and let them die. And if you look at like what Trump has done with ICE and that sort of thing, like, oh, he's going to target migrants or whatever, he's just accusing them of being like unclean in some type of way. And MAGA claims that like trans people and LGBT people are degenerate and they compare us to like diseases and stuff like this, and say that like we have to be like removed from society in order for society to like flourish and stuff like that, like treating us as if we're plagued even though there's no reason to think that we're plagued. And instead of going and specifically like getting the people that are actually plagued and are harmful to society, they are simply going after us because of like who we are. I think Arthas is absolutely MAGA. At least the policies that he has are exactly the same sort of thing that MAGA would support and that Trump would support 100%. And he had like his own little cult of personality as well. So it was like a lot of people just went along with what Arthas said and did because they're like, oh, he's Arthas, he's the prince, he's noble, he's rich, we should listen to him. While he ends up just doing things that ends up getting them killed. Definitely Trump. That would be my case for why Arthas is MAGA. It's also ironic that like MAGA can't like defend like any of the crap that they have done or like thought about at all. Like I've noticed that they've been really silent on like calling in on like a lot of the call-in shows and stuff like that. You just like barely see them anymore.
Your arrival proved timely, yet the battle rages on.
What do y'all think? I think that if Arthas was like modern day and stuff like that, I think Arthas would definitely be on the side of like Trump and stuff like that. He's definitely conservative. And like the values that he would claim that he has. See, this is like going to end up being another like this could be a wipe. Like these mobs, you should not pull them all together. I mean, we do have a paladin though. Maybe they will be able to like hold the aggro and stuff. But the issue is like a lot of these are stunning mobs. A lot of them like have different debuffs and stuff they can like throw on you. It's just a bad idea to pull all these guys at the same time. But that was back when the expansion was also current content. Because it's time walking, some of it might be like a little bit easier now. It's my first time doing the time walking version of these dungeons. But yeah, that would be my case for why Arthas is MAGA. And his like complete lack of virtue entirely. You could say, oh, he's a paladin and stuff like that, or like he did what was necessary. That just seems like utterly ridiculous to me. And it's the same way that people do the whole like Garrosh did nothing wrong. Are you familiar like with the story of Warcraft and stuff? Like I don't know if you ever like played it. Hopefully people get the mechanic right for this boss too. You have to aim a meat hook at the boss, and then when they go to like count down, you have to step out of the way so that the golem will pull him off of the platform up there to DPS him. And people just like fuck it up all the time. I bet I could put my teleportation down before I do that move, and I bet it would help a lot.
Competent oafs. Gorgrine, try not to damage those limbs whilst you tear them off.
Let's see if they get it. Jumpy, jumpy. Yeah, more or less what you're thinking, Morgan. How mad do you think that they're going to be whenever I end up going and like just tearing into their god, you know, and their god's immorality? The ironic thing is, I feel like if the Christian god existed, that the Christian god would actually probably like support someone like Arthas, like almost 100%. Yeah, see, that worked a lot better. I was able to get like right back into the fight, teleporting.
I have to rebuild those. I can't wait to put your corpse. I'll have you in stitches.
Yeah, it's supposed to be slow DPS on this guy. There, see that? The arrow is supposed to be pointed at the guy up on the stage. See? Like this can end up taking just forever to get this right.
Another exquisite creation.
Yeah, they don't know what they're doing.
You in stitches. I must preserve your parts for later. No!
So frustrating.
My favorite.
Yeah, aim that at him.
Oh, I'm awfully proud of this one.
There you go.
Imbecile! I'm the one who made you.
Oh, you just played. Yeah, if you just play the like play through Warcraft like 1, 2, and 3, the same argument still stands.
I'll have you in stitches. Preserve your file. No respect for craftsmanship. Imbecile!
I'm saying, like, when you look at the things that Arthas did, he had no principles, was not actually, like, doing this stuff for his people. And this is, like, a lot of times where you end up seeing, like, apologetics and conservative, like, lines of thinking with, like, actual, like, atrocities and stuff like this. Like, if you look at what he was doing those things from, like, a very conservative perspective. And, like, there is very little, like, anything at all that you could argue that, you know, he's like progressive in any sort of way. Now this guy basically will try and trap you in place. You have to run from Comet Storm that. Or it just absolutely, like, blasts you. That would be the thing that, like, if we end up dying, it's going to be because people mess up the Comet Storm. You're supposed to kind of run toward the outside and kind of overlap it with people. See that? Yeah, see, somebody just died. Looks like Pally, my bro, died to it. Sorry, Paladin. He also can, like, teleport you down below, and you end up having to, like, jump back up. See? Oh, like that, see? He threw me down. Let's say. I mean, he's literally such a bad... He's already a bad guy well before the Frozen Throne. The Frozen Throne was just worse. Like, that's when he actually got his power. But it was the Helm of Domination that, like, was making him do the things that he did. Oh god, I get... it's me again. Why do I keep getting thrown down there? Sigh. There. Send me back up there. Alright, well, I'm going to address what you're saying in just a minute. When I get done with this boss. Alright. They're like, heal me. I'm like, I'll res you, even if the healer won't. There you go. See? Because I'm kind. You're welcome. I gotta do that, like, 3 more times in order to, like, complete this. I've got a quest that requires me to do, like, 5 of those dungeons. That's what, like, time walking is. And if you ever want to play WoW or you want to get into WoW and you don't know really, like, what you're doing, whatever, you can watch these streams because, like, I've been playing this game for, like, literally decades. And, I pretty much go do all the, like, kind of casual content that a lot of people would do. So, that's my little goblin. Oh, I never transmogged my, see? I've got blue hair. I think she's so cute. Just adorable. I'm gonna transmog my weapons. Let's see. Alright, and what were you saying? Alright. You wouldn't argue that he was progressive, but you're not completely confident that you're a kid. You felt that he was a well-meaning hero that was influenced by the Warlock. Okay. So, the way that conservatives try and frame Arthas, and this is why I was saying, like, it's always, like, this kind of conservative propaganda, right? Is they're exactly what you're saying. They'll say that, well, Arthas, like, meant to do well by his people. And, like, all you know is from him, like, literally just saying that. But you could make the same argument, like, with Trump. Well, Trump wants to do, well, he says, make America great again. He says that he loves Americans. So he must, you know, he's motivated by doing well by Americans. That's as deep thought as it is when you say Arthas was trying to do well by his people. Arthas's actions were like continuously like against the, against his people. And it should have been like red flags to people in the campaign when you end up getting to Stratholme, and Uther like turns against him there, and Jaina turns against him. And if Jaina, who is like a close, trusted companion, is like, no, I can't watch you do this, and Uther is like, he's literally the head of the Paladin Order, is like, no, don't do this. Like, this is like the wrong thing to do. And you see him getting more and more extreme as he's going on. Arthas's downfall was that Arthas was always self-absorbed. He thought that he alone had the insight to do this, that if he just had enough power, or if people just listened to him and just obeyed and did what he said, then everything would be fine. Arthas's narrative is a cautionary tale for people that are basically, self-centered, but at the same time think like, oh, if we just listen to the great leader, everything would be fine. If they would just have listened to the leader, everything would have been good. But, he was end up, being duped into going to Northrend. Like, he was lured into that, but at the same time, like, he should have known better. And he ends up going to Northrend, and what? Like, putting on the crown of domination, and you're like, the warlock, yeah, it was Ner'zhul. But Ner'zhul wasn't the one that like corrupted him. Ner'zhul's soul was also bound to the helm of domination. Like Ner'zhul was also like a slave to that crown, but Ner'zhul's soul was put in there, by other forces. You'd have to go, and it's like Sargeras's minions for the whole thing. So no, I don't think Arthas is a good hero whatsoever. Arthas was doing what was in his interest, not the interest of like the kingdom or whatever. I feel like he's one of these people that would like lie to themselves to be like, oh, I did everything for my people, when if you like look at what their actions actually are, it's clear that they are like doing this for themselves the entire time. Like the decisions that they're making is clearly self-centered, and he's like so self-obsessed and like he must be right. Well, yeah, that's because going up to Northrend is after, the purge of Stratholme. Stratholme was supposed to be like, this is where Arthas like actually breaks, and like this is where he like flips to the evil side or whatever. But I just want you to imagine, let's say that Arthas goes and purges this city, and he manages to like stop that undead plague. Would we then say that Arthas was, right, exactly. That's what I'm getting at. No, it wouldn't be. Right? Because you're killing innocent people. Like if your ethical framework allows you to kill a bunch of innocent people, then you're already just as bad as the bad guys are. Like you're already as villainous as the plague is. Right? What's the fear of the plague spreading? It kills people, right? And if you go and kill people because they might turn, then you're already doing the same thing. You're just indiscriminately killing everyone, which is the same thing that plague would do. You're just as bad as the plague. You're just as bad as like the plague lord spreading the plague. And that's why that's unacceptable. The only thing that would have made sense for him to do in a situation like that is basically like to start gathering people up, like to split the city. You could quarantine the city and like split the city up, then say like, okay, the people we know are sick, we're going to keep over here in this area that's kind of like cordoned off from everyone else. And if they turn, then we'll do what has to be done to stop the plague. But the people that show no symptoms, we'll keep, like that might be showing some symptoms, we'll keep over here, and no symptoms, we'll keep over there. And then you basically like try and, triage it. You wouldn't just go in and be like, oh, look, Ebola is spreading here. There are some people that are sick with Ebola. I guess we should just kill everyone, which, by the way, are things that have really happened in real life to villages, where they'd be like, oh, there's a few people that have the plague here. We should just go and kill them all. That's why that's why I said you would take the people that are showing symptoms and you'd have to put them in their own little quarantine zone. And then if they turned, you would do what's necessary. You would kill the zombie, like, once the zombie turned. Right, but that you could secure them beforehand. You could, like, strap them down to beds. You could put them in, like, you know, their own little, like, areas. There's no reason why you'd have to, like, just let them wander around and not deal with it, like, not contain them at all. I actually kind of like I like the big hammer design, but I also just like the fact that it's the war mace of unrequited love, you know? And I've always liked the old war mace. And it's also the caress of insanity, so it feels like, you know. Yeah, you're missing the point, Shane. Like, I agree with you that it doesn't. I'm saying that it would be, you can just look at it in steps to say, would you do this with a, like, highly contagious plague or whatever that's killing people? Would you just kill them all then? And if you say no, and you would separate them into different areas, you could do the exact same thing, except in the area where there's the people that are, like, very sick with the other plague, it would be the case that, like, you're going to have to kill some of them that turn into, like, hostile zombies or whatever. But if you preemptively do that, you're crossing a line into unethical territory, because, like, especially if you're like, oh, that means the entire city has to go. Now you're, like, killing a huge amount of innocent people, because, and even then, I'd ask you, wouldn't going and killing all these people expose his own men to the plague? So some of his men are going to end up, you know, becoming zombies? Like, that's possible too. So then, like, well, after he purges the city, then he'd have to start purging his own men as well to make sure that, like, none of them are, you know, zombies either. Right, it's a good story in the sense that it's a cautionary tale to be like, hey, don't do this. This is a bad idea. And at the end of the day, Arthas ended up becoming like an undead himself and spreading the plague. At least, I'm pretty sure he was an undead. I can't remember if the Helm of Domination, like, actually killed him or not, but I'm almost positive he is an undead. Like, Bolvar Fordragon, the current Lich King, is an undead. I'm pretty sure Arthas was too. I just can't remember if he actually was or not. I'm pretty sure he was. Even just from, like, not eating and drinking and stuff would end up, like, killing his body, but keeping him alive. Right, but I'm saying the ideal thing that you'd want to do in a situation like that, like, if possible. Otherwise, you know, the only ethical thing to do is probably going to be to, like, get out of there and, like, try and rally an army elsewhere. Or, like, evacuate all the people that are, you know, that are healthy, or go in there and march the people that are all sick, you know, away, and see if you can, like, camp them away from everyone else. Or get the forces to, like, barricade them in, if need be. Well, yeah, I agree with that as well. But, you know, they're still calling us a disease and saying that things like we are a social contagion. So, like, our existence in their worldview is spreading to other people. And that's why they create stuff like this idea of, like, rapid onset gender dysphoria. Is they are claiming that being, like, near us or being exposed to us ends up turning people into LGBT people. And they did used to purge LGBT people out of society all the time. So, like, the idea, like, well, they wouldn't treat, you know, queer people like a plague or whatever. No, they absolutely did, and they absolutely have, and they will still say that, like, just being exposed to us or our content, like, makes you more susceptible to becoming LGBT. Like, there are people that will claim that there are no trans kids. If a xenomorph hugged someone in your party, do you kill them before they burst? No. Because there might be something that could be done about it. Unless the person requests you to kill them. Or, you know, it's too late type of thing. Like, if the chest burster is bursting out of them, I don't think there's an issue with, like, stabbing the chest burster to kill it. It's going to just so happen that it's also going to result in that person's death, too. But the chest burster has already done, you know, significant damage to them. I really need Fill Slate. That's what I would answer that question. As long as you're morally consistent, you know? And I feel like Arthas was definitely not morally consistent whatsoever. And, like, he kind of lost the plot of why he was doing anything in the first place. We've got to stop this plague and save these people. We got to save these people by killing all of the people. Like, I think you kind of, like, jumped tracks there, buddy. Trust his loved ones. Conservative fears are incorrect. But if they were correct, then they are still wrong, but at least it's understandable. Like with Arthas's fears were correct, but he failed to trust his loved ones. Right, and keep in mind, in World of Warcraft, there's, like, magic and stuff. Like, Jaina is one of those powerful wizards, like, in Azeroth. And, like, he had Jaina with him. There's also the other paladins and stuff. Which, by the way, you can, if you want to request an invite, like, you can come on here and just talk with me so that I'm not having to, like, constantly read the chat over there. If you want to, like, have this conversation. You know, I do find it, it is an entertaining topic. I do like kind of moral hypotheticals, you know, and I do like World of Warcraft. That was a lot. Right. And he was also the king, you know? He could have quarantined it. He had, like, he had the authority over, like, all the kingdom and shit at the time. Like, at least the paladin group. They could have, like, went and got help. Jaina could have gotten help from her other, like, you know, other wizard friends and stuff like that. Where Stratholme is, like, also not too far away from Dalaran. So they could have gone to Dalaran, for aid. I don't remember. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Dalaran existed because the Kirin Tor already existed, and the Tristfall Guardian and all that stuff. That was before Medivh even opened the Dark Portal. So yeah, all that shit was there already. I was about to say, like, maybe I'm just thinking, like, maybe I'm getting something historically wrong in the game. But no, those orders were there. They already existed. It's just in a world, like, one of the things that always kind of bothered me, that he was the prince, meant that he felt pressure to be a great leader that could do no wrong. That's what I'm saying. It's like, he had the same kind of, like, following that, like, conservatives did, where, like, Trump can do no wrong, Arthas can do no wrong, Garrosh can do no wrong. Like, they always want to say that as long as their leader just says, like, oh, I'm doing this for my people, like, I want to take care of my people, then, like, automatically it makes whatever he is doing justified or right, as long as he believes he's doing the right thing. And, like, the problem is, if you just have this belief that you're doing the right thing because some person says so, and you don't have any underlying principles about it, then you end up falling, in with divine command theory, which is like obviously, not a good ethical framework. Like there's no actual framework there. It's just it's good because so and so said it's good. And ironically enough, you get the same thing with like Christians, right? Christian ethics are only right because they think like God says it's right. At least if they're going by divine command theory. I'm not saying there can't be Christians that like have their own framework, but if they're saying that like, oh, this is good because God says so, or they get their morals and ethics from the Bible because the Bible says so, then 100% like it is you know, it is just divine command theory. Meanwhile, they'll be like, "Oh, atheists have no morals whatsoever," and it's like they don't. It's like they don't understand. You can have like morals and ethics from other sources besides like the Bible, right? I'm trying to level up some of my like engineering and stuff right now too, so that going into the next expansion, I'll uh I'll have some devices I can use to like, summon a robot to like help repair gear and that type of thing. I think that would just be like useful. Yeah, you can join if you want to talk about that. I also want to we can also talk about whatever you want to really, but that's kind of like what I was thinking. Or we could when I finish with this, like also pull up the stuff about God. I don't know if you care to talk about like Christian ethics or anything. Just think it'd be funny. Spires. Well, we'll see how this goes.
We are vastly outnumbered mortals. The Forsworn have cut a swath through most of our forces. Vanquish their rear guard while I confront Devos.
Test 1 2.
Yeah, I can hear you. Welcome.
Spires.
How are you? How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Pretty well. I saw you. I was muted on Discord for a second. I was like, what the hell?
Yeah. And then I couldn't. I was going back to the live stream, but I fell behind like 15 seconds. Test 1 2. Oop, there we go.
Yeah, you probably have to turn the stream off.
Yeah, I just did.
Yeah. So, what do you want to talk about?
Well, just on the same topic, I just had like one final thought on it, but I'm sure it'll evolve into others. But this applies to Warcraft as well, but I think it's especially the case with Warhammer 40K, because that's like a super fascistic world. But like in the Warhammer 40K universe, do you know much about 40K?
Unfortunately, I know more than I would like because of like people that were in other servers. I know a little bit about it.
Cool. I mean, so my perception of it is that in the world of Warhammer 40K, humanity occupies like a significant portion of the galaxy, but they are surrounded by like very dangerous, very hostile aliens, and there's literally like a interdimensional breach in the galaxy, the Eye of Terror, where like chaotic, bloodthirsty gods that want nothing more than to like cause suffering and death and chaos across the galaxy are there, constantly, you know, probing and pressuring at humans. Then there's also like other hostile alien species, and so like humanity has basically been on a war footing for like thousands of years, fighting this never-ending war, because if they don't, then they like humanity will become extinct, and that's like in broad strokes. Like there's a lot more going on, but that's the setting. And so in that universe, like the justification for the fascistic control and the militarism um, is like more understandable. Um, and I have another direction we can take this too. Uh, so when people look at that and they're like, "Yeah, I love that universe because it's like such an like amazing story, and I like playing in there, and I like playing the games and playing the tabletop and stuff, and reading the novels." Sure, that's fine, that's cool. But then when they try to apply that to real life, and they're like, "Yeah, like that's why we need a strong man," it's like, no, we don't. This is real life. We don't like we don't have fucking demons at the gates trying to kill us all. Uh, in fact, the biggest enemy to like us living good lives is the strong man that you want to put in charge because he's aligned with the billionaire class and all that stuff. Um, but if there were like demons and monsters and stuff, then like that kind of provides a justification, whether or not it fully justifies or not, you could talk about. But at least there's an argument there for why you might want to structure society that way. Do you know what I mean?
So, I, my issue is like I still don't understand like why you would think that structuring society like that would be a good idea, even in a situation like that, because like at the end of the day, I think like what would make people stronger is going to be like community working together, like all that sort of thing, not authoritarian dictatorship. Like I don't see why having to fight some enemy means that like you need a dictator. It still doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, and on that I agree as well because like I said, there's two problems. The first problem is that like um, for the conservative, their fears aren't real, and the second problem is that even if they were real, um, I think that there's like better ways. Like going back to Arthas, there's better ways to deal with the plague than killing the whole town. And honestly, he made a few mistakes before then. Like he should have been working more. Like when Jaina's like, "Hey, this is wrong. This is bad." Same with I think Uther was his teacher. Was like, "Hey, like this is bad." He should have been like, "Hey, like I know you guys. I trust you guys. Like talk to me. What do we do then? Open to suggestions." Um, but I just like I when I was a kid playing the game, I could understand where he was coming from every step of the way until he raced into the Northrend to like chase Kel'Thuzad. At that point, it's like, okay, like if your goal is to protect people, then like threat's over. You should be staying in the kingdom to protect people, not like racing to Northrend. And then of course he gets corrupted and all this stuff, and um, the rest is history. So I agree with you that yeah, like working together and building a civilization. I mean, Warhammer 40K, even before the Eye of Terror became a thing, they were already fascistic because they'd encounter other human colonies that developed in dramatically different directions than the Imperium did, and they're like, "Oh, you guys are like very different from us, so we're gonna kill you all and take any information you might have that can serve us." So like, fuck the Imperium. Um, but the fact that like they're a highly militarized society, um, at least I don't think it works, but at least I can see where someone's coming from because the threats that they're pointing to, all the stuff I mentioned, are actually real. Whereas in real life, they're not real. Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, but in that sense, it's like it's just saying that I understand where somebody of some like worldview is coming from is like, yeah, I understand what the worldview is claiming, like what their concern is, right? Like I can see the thing that they're afraid of, and I get like why they're afraid of it and all that type of thing. I just find like their answers are always like the dumbest, worst answers you could ever offer for a problem.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not going to, it doesn't help you. Like, it's like, oh, these other people are developing a way different than us. Like, so what? That doesn't, like, what does it even mean? Like, why would that be a threat to you, Unless you're following this, like, dumb conservative idea. Instead, like, multiculturalism is something that would help, or, like, globalism and that type of thing, which I know, like, holy crap, conservatives hate that stuff. but that is the answer to a lot of these problems. And like what what ends up solving things like COVID or some medical crisis faster is everyone working together around the world to help fix it, not like one country being like, oh, our one country should be the only one working toward this, only our scientists or whatever. We all know like that's dumb, and that the fact that we have like communications, like ability to talk to multiple people from around the world, is one of the reasons why like we've advanced like so much with science and everything else, is because the greatest minds in the world can all communicate with each other, and often those minds are from different areas. It's not just the United States coming up with the ideas that we need to follow. And that's where like I get very frustrated, especially whenever I watch like streamers and stuff who just seem like they're just dumb as dirt. When it's like they would make an argument that Arthas is right or Garrosh is right or something like that, and they don't even think about how working with other people could have made it a lot better or easier. Like, oh, well, you could have worked with the Kirin Tor, you could have worked with the Tauren, like, there's all sorts of stuff that I know they didn't have the Tauren then. I'm just giving an example because like later on in WoW, like obviously all the people like know each other and have interactions and all that stuff. And then a lot of people, like conservatives specifically, will say things like they hate how it's like World of Peacecraft now. And
Sorry, World of what craft?
Peacecraft.
Oh.
That's what they call it because they like want to mock the idea of people coming together to like work together. And on my side, I get frustrated that like the factions are even still fighting over things. Like I know that people are like, oh, but it's World of Warcraft and they should always be fighting. But there's other enemies, there's other factions that are always invading Azeroth or posing a threat to Azeroth. You don't like the Horde and the Alliance in the endgame have been fighting. Like, I've been playing this game for 20 years. You mean to tell me that like we can't move past the Horde and Alliance divide? Like the game can just never, the world can never be allowed to develop further than that. They can't, they've fought the Fourth War. They've had like all this shit happen, and multiple times like different orders and everything else have had to come together to work against stuff happening. And you mean to tell me that after all of that, we can't just like put our differences aside, recognizing like, yeah, it's really dumb for us to like keep fighting over this stuff when there's all these other threats to Azeroth. Like our leaders can't come together and negotiate things like that. That's what I'm saying is the idea that, you can't negotiate things, that you can't work together with each other is toxic as hell.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I remember playing in Warcraft 3, once you you had to destroy the world tree in order to defeat the demon. I believe his name was Archimonde. And so once you defeated him, like at that point the Alliance and the Horde had come together. And the Alliance is like under Jaina is like, oh shit, it turns out that like the reason that the orcs were evil is because they were literally given blood of a demon and like manipulated into attacking us in the first place. So like they were never the actual enemy. And then the reason and like her personal experience where like I lost Arthas to similar forces. So like whether it's humans or whether it's orcs being corrupted by these demons that want to like kill everyone, like that's the enemy. So we should have like when and then there was like the Horde was being established, and in the like bonus campaign or whatever, the Durotar campaign, Jaina's dad, who's like an old school admiral, Admiral Proudmoore, is just like, no, orcs are like shit. We're gonna like kill them all. Like basically, he was like a racist, fascist fuck, right? And he was just a veteran of the Second War, and like was not having it. And like he was like he was the enemy, but in the end, he was defeated. And then Jaina's like, "Hey, we don't want to fight anymore." And I was like, "Okay, humans and orcs, like that's the next evolution is the humans and the orcs and all the different species getting along and fighting against like the demons and stuff." And then when WoW was announced and WoW came out and it was back to Alliance versus Horde, like I never did play World of Warcraft other than like a few minutes here and there. I never got into it, but I remember just hearing that setup and being like, "What? That's a progression." Like then over the course of like 3 games, 5 technically, because there's 2 expansions, humans and orcs were always fighting with sometimes just the 2 of them, and then other times with allies, and this time with even more allies. And now they finally are not fighting. So now like now they can be friends, and they just, I mean, obviously it's because out of universe, um, humans versus orcs is like a common fantasy trope, and it's like what the first 3 games are about. So people are going to tune into World of Warcraft. They're going to want to be humans versus orcs. That's just the aesthetic that they're used to. So out of universe, that's the reason they did it. But I really wish they hadn't. I think it would have been more interesting if they hadn't done that.
Well, the like end game reasoning for like why the Alliance like had a hatred of the like Forsaken and stuff made sense to me, like, you know, at first. But it's just like there's been so much shit that's happened over the years, and then they've had like both of these, like, you know, the Horde and the Alliance have ended up doing like really terrible things in the terms of these conflicts, and that's happened over and over and over. And it's just like, okay, like if you want to make an argument that like either one of them is like are evil, it's literally they've both committed war crimes and stuff over time. And like for all the stuff that Garrosh did, and you know, in the way that they just terribly handled it, you could end up saying that, well, yeah, Garrosh like tried to go and you know, commit genocide and all this shit against people. I just don't. I just hate the idea that it's like, oh, it's still, we're still at, you know, Horde and Alliance fighting. You know, they blew up Theramore. Jaina's father was killed during like BFA, and then they ended up using that as an excuse for Jaina to be like, oh, my dad was right the entire time, and then like end up erasing a lot of the like progress that Jaina had developed as a character with like Thrall and everything else, for her to just be like, oh no, I'm fine with this. Now I'm going to like lead the, you know, the Alliance against like the Horde and wipe them all out. Even though Garrosh was already like arrested and stuff, and the Horde and Alliance had come together to overthrow Garrosh. And then you end up having like Sylvanas as a war chief end up going and, you know, leading them astray and doing a bunch of stupid shit with this jailer character, which is an absolutely atrocious storyline. But even then, I don't get why not say like, okay, or like y'all did all the warfare between the Horde and the Alliance that you wanted to, like that is done. Why do we have to keep going back to this when like a lot of the worst writing that WoW has ever experienced was used to justify wars between the two of them?
None of that surprises me, but you know, I'm obviously not familiar with all the events you're talking about. But that seems especially bad because like Jaina saw Arthas go off the deep end, and then she was like fighting against her dad. She fought with the orcs against the demons. Then she went against her dad and was like apologetic when Thrall ended up having to kill him. And then she's leading her people. So is this guy that you mentioned, was he like an orc extremist that wanted to kill all humans?
So Garrosh is like has a complicated like past, right?
Okay.
So Garrosh was found in the Burning Crusade in this like orc village, and you find out that his father was Hellscream.
Okay, Grom, yeah.
Okay, and he's depressed, and he is like, oh, my, you know, my dad is responsible like partially for what happened to our people and all this other shit like that. So he's like depressed all throughout that expansion, but you end up like cheering him up by like helping him rediscover like his orc fighting spirit type of thing. And then later on, you know, in going to Northrend against Arthas, they Garrosh is one of the like main orcs that is like, he's made like a general or whatever. He's like one of the main people like helping like fight this. And so he's seen as like a brave warrior, then like he's gotten his fighting spirit type of thing, right? And then from there, like ends up developing as more and more of a character, and he was being written as kind of like a broken, warrior who came from a shameful family, and he like learned honor again. Like, it was actually like a good story for like how this character went from, dealing with his like mental health problems and everything else, like severe depression, and like just because of who your dad is, that doesn't mean like you're a bad person type of thing. Like, I really appreciated the story in its kind of like original inception, how they initially were pulling it off. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, and also his dad died a hero because in the end he helped kill Manaroth, the demon that originally enslaved the orcs.
Right, but he didn't know that stuff. You know what I mean? Like he
Oh,
felt that.
I thought it would have been common knowledge. I think Fear Thrall would have like said that to everyone.
I'm pretty sure that's part of the whole like quest of him like regaining his confidence and that type of thing.
Mm.
I don't remember like the exact impetus of his storyline at the beginning of it, but getting to the important thing, so he ends up like starting to show himself as more and more and more of a capable leader type of thing. After Cataclysm and all this other shit happens, like eventually Thrall steps down from being the leader of the Horde, and ends up giving leadership over to Vol'jin, his like troll buddy, right? So, wait, hold on. Nope, sorry. I'm getting ahead in the storyline because there's been a few war chiefs at this point. So he's going to step down, and he turns over leadership of the Horde to Garrosh. Then we're going into like Mist of Pandaria. Garrosh, as a leader, because Blizzard had brought on writers that seemed like they didn't really know the character, they didn't know the storyline or any of the stuff leading up to that point. All of a sudden, Garrosh takes a much more fascistic turn and authoritarian, and it ends up becoming like an orc supremacist, where he ends up like segregating like Orgrimmar into like different slums, where like, oh, the goblins stay in these slums and the Tauren can stay in these slums and that type of thing, but like the big proud orc capital of Orgrimmar should be ruled and for by orcs type of thing. So in the endgame storylines, you see this starting to build up more and more and more, as like Garrosh seems like he's favoring orcs like very heavily over other classes or other races. He ends up threatening Sylvanas because she, after Arthas's fall, had retained some of the Vicrol that could like raise the dead, and then she's basically explaining that, hey, if we end up fighting and killing humans, I can use the Vicrol to like raise them back up as Forsaken, since my people can't reproduce. If we keep fighting all of these wars, we're going to end up being eradicated. And then Garrosh has a line where he's like, what makes you any different from Arthas at this point? Like, do you know what this means? And then she's like, oh, isn't it obvious? I serve the Horde type of thing. So then
she wants the fights to keep happening so she can keep on having more undead.
Well, this is, I don't want to start delving further into Sylvanas' story because that'll like divert from this, right? What you need to know is after, I'll just give you a very, like, there's so much more story to this. I'm just going to touch on this very briefly. After the events of Icecrown Citadel, Sylvanas jumps off of the tower and kills herself in an attempt to like be free of her undead life and all this stuff, because she doesn't want to be an undead, and she felt like her only cause in continuing her life was to like hunt Arthas down. Now this really like irritated me because like she's supposed to be like the leader of the Forsaken and all this other stuff, but I could understand they'd set the character up as like a pretty depressed character for a lot of her story and that type of thing. And then Vara Mathras, which was a Dreadlord that was like running Undercity with her, ended up being you know, like one of the only people that she could trust, but he was also manipulating it. There's other stuff going on. All you need to know is that when she jumped off of Icecrown Citadel and she died, she literally, in a novel, like, was taken to hell and was being tormented there for a long time before some, like, power found her and was like, this is the fate that will await you should you ever actually perish. And then essentially revived her and told her that, like, you know, that she needed to get these Vrykul and keep the undead, like, going as her, like, shield for eternity. Otherwise, like, she has hell to await her. Now, why does she have hell to await her? Like, I don't know. Why does she deserve to go to hell, but, like, the, like, alliance leaders and stuff don't deserve to go to hell for what they've done? But putting that aside, that really irritated me as part of, like, that storyline. So Sylvanas has the Vrykul, and she wants to, like, continue making undead because she knows that if the undead, which she views now as, like, her own shield, like, to prevent her from dying, that if she ever dies, she's going to hell and is going to face, like, eternal torture. So she wants to, like, keep making them. But Garrosh also tells her after this, in the original dialogue, which Blizzard has edited since then to make it more, like, you know, acceptable because it was obviously misogynistic. But he tells her to watch her clever mouth bitch, and that death comes for all of us, some sooner than others, is what he had said to her. And that he's, like, directly threatening one of the leaders of the other factions. Then Garrosh ends up being challenged to, like, mock thrall by the son of Cairn Bloodhoof, or yeah, Cairn Bloodhoof, which is
The Tauren, yeah.
what's that?
He's the Tauren.
Right.
Tauren.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there were, like, Dark Totem Tauren, I think that's what they're called. They're like wanting to stir up shit, and they basically hate the Tauren and hate the leaders. Yeah, it was Karn Bloodhoof challenged him. And the Dark Totem and Mock Thrall, it's a fight to the death type of thing. And he was basically fighting Garrosh for leadership of the Horde. And the Dark Totem, in the background, poisoned Garrosh's axe, Gorehowl. And so that they end up having the duel. And, you know, at first, Karn is, like, dodging all of his blows and, like, beating the shit out of him with his, like, totem club type of thing. And then it's like, it was looking like Garrosh was going to be, like, defeated and possibly killed by Cairn. Then Garrosh gets one hit off on him, like, just a little nick of his axe. And it ends up, like, you know, after a few moments, Cairn is, like, severely injured and, you know, wounded and sickly. And, like, everyone looking kind of can see that, like, oh, he's been poisoned or something's wrong with him. But Garrosh, you know, because the Mock Thrall was, like, can be a fight to the death, Garrosh just takes the opportunity and, like, cleaves into his head and kills him.
Jeez.
And, like, so now Garrosh is, like, dishonored, you know what I mean? Like, he's very willing to do dishonorable things to, like, to win or whatever. And so he keeps, you know, getting this rhetoric that, like, we need to fight the Alliance, we need to fight the Alliance, we need to, like, crush them once and for all and, like, secure freedom for, like, all Orc-kind. This is why I really hate the, like, fascist narrative, because, like, it keeps appearing in these games and it ends up having, like, catastrophic results, right? But it's like, oh, but he only cared about orcs and he only wanted to, like, preserve orcs. So this is what Garrosh did. So there's, like, Mists of Pandaria expansion comes. They discover the Wandering Isles and all this other stuff like that. Then, like, I'm going to make a long story short, but there are these creatures called the Shah that can manifest basically because of strong emotions. So if you have strong emotions, you start producing these, like, entities called the Shah that, like, literally spring up out of the earth or can turn you into a monstrosity. And because of the battles going on between the Alliance and the Horde, there are significant emotions there, and they end up becoming, like, you know, like, creating warfare all across this, like, once peaceful land. That's why the Pandarian are all like monks and stuff like that, was to stop themselves from turning into Shaw or from spreading Shaw around. But during this campaign, while all this stuff is going on, Garrosh ends up learning about it was a magical artifact that the Blue Dragonflight was supposed to be guarding and protecting or whatever. I can't remember if it was like the lens or an eye. I can't remember if it was the same one that once contained the power to like defeat Deathwing or whatever the fuck. But when Deathwing was defeated, the focusing iris, I think is what it was called, or something like that. It basically was a powerful artifact that could hold all of this magical power that Thrall and the dragon aspects once imbued a bunch of power into to defeat Deathwing. This is relevant because that the artifact was still left over, like it still existed. It just didn't have all that power within it. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the Horde or Horde spies or some shit ends up recovering this. Garrosh ends up getting it. Then he decides to take this artifact that could hold all this magical power and stuff like that, and basically start infusing it with like tons and tons and tons and tons of arcane power. And he ends up making the first like World of Warcraft like nuclear weapon, like a mana bomb is what they called it. But it was like literally, enough power inside of it to like level an entire fucking city. And Garrosh then ends up taking the mana bomb like through Dalaran, because there's like a system of portals there set up to like go to like different places in the world,
Mm-hmm.
So he has his people escort this thing through Dalaran, and Jaina like knows what it is and is like demanding that somebody do something to stop it or whatever, but she's being told that Dalaran must remain neutral and they can't take a side in the conflict and all that type of thing. So the leaders of Dalaran do nothing while they take the stuff through there. And I think like some of the I think there ended up being like a conflict there where people tried to fight and stop it. But needless to say, Garrosh's plan is successful, and he basically pushes the mana bomb through a portal that sends it to like Theramore, which is like where Jaina's family is from, like the Proudmoore family is from, because he viewed Theramore as the biggest threat to Orgrimmar because it was a giant Alliance port, and reckoned that the Alliance could send, like ships and stuff there and then invade Orgrimmar or Kalimdor that way. So it was like the biggest threat, according to him, for his people. So for his people, he pushes a mana bomb through there and ends up nuking a city full of like, innocent people. Like everyone at Theramore is pretty much just mana bombed, and like he kills all these innocent people and shit in the name of defending his fucking like homeland. Then in the Pandarian area, they end up finding or discovering that there's ancient like Pandarian emperor that had like a terracotta army, and then like of golems to serve him, and the terracotta army could be like reactivated or continuously, like if people did the right thing, you could create these things again. So then he ends up trying to like take control of, like, that's why he's fighting so hard for Pandaria, to get a hold of creating these the Mogu is what they're called. He wants to create a whole bunch of them to use against the Alliance, and this basically just ends up leading to he also tries to assassinate Vol'jin, leader of the trolls at the time, because Vol'jin is like, and the Darkspear trolls are not agreeing with him, and they don't want to go along with like what he's doing with his plans and stuff like that, right? So I'm just setting all of this up because the Horde and the Alliance come together once again, and they basically siege Orgrimmar in order to go after Garrosh, because he's threatened leaders of other factions. He's tried to have them assassinated. He killed Cairn. Like, he mana bombed Theramore. Like they're like, they're like, enough is enough. So you do a raid where you go into Orgrimmar and you basically fight Garrosh's army and like overthrow him and stuff like that beside the Alliance. And it turns out that Garrosh was also doing like Nazi like experiments on his own people and shit underneath Orgrimmar in order to like turn them into like biological weapons and all this other stuff like that. And that is kind of the end of that character. He ends up like surrendering because he's a coward, and they end up like arresting him, so to speak, to put him in like WoW jail or whatever. But he ends up getting free later on, causing some other shit, and Thrall eventually has to track him down and kill him. And like there's a cinematic that you can watch on YouTube if you want to watch the duel between Thrall and Garrosh, where Thrall kills him.
Poor
But that
Thrall having to kill the son of his friend, but like also fuck.
Right. And like I felt bad for Thrall as well, but especially because Garrosh and during their fight is like talking all this shit, like, oh, you abandoned me when I needed you most, and like you should have been there to guide me, type of thing. Like blaming Thrall for all of his own mistakes, like just pathetic. And I find conservatives, that line of thinking is very common with them, right? Like everyone else fails them. It's never their responsibility. Like they're never responsible for their actions. All of us, like, shouldn't upset them by existing. They have to, they would like murder a trans woman after hooking up with us because, they would feel like, oh, we should have said something before we hooked up with them or something. Like, even though very often they would know or they would be informed at some point during it, and sometimes they will hook up with us and then later on come back, sometimes as much as several days later, to murder us then. And conservatives will still blame you and say, oh, well, like maybe you should have told them. And it's like, no, that's not true. They will still attack you and kill you even if you tell them about these things. And look what's going on like all across the conservative spheres when you talk about like Israel or whatever else. Like they will make endless excuses for this type of shit. That's why I really despise the fascist ideology that they like write in these games a lot of times. And it just ends up being the case that a lot of times they do end up making excuses. Like every time you see in like WoW forums or people saying Garrosh did nothing wrong, it's the I'm gonna just full screen for this real quick. I'll full screen for it and I'll log off the game to talk about this, because this is something I thought about the other day that like irritated me and just kind of like makes me sad and frustrated. I feel like there's a like memification of cruelty on the right, as in the things that we would all agree, like, okay, memes can be funny and stuff like that, but they will take memes like Garrosh did nothing wrong and just memify it. So now you have a problem within like the WoW community where some of these people will say Garrosh did nothing wrong and they mean it like in a meme way, right? Like it genuinely, like they're joking, they're trying to be edgy. They're like, oh, this is, all the things that Garrosh did, this would like shock people if I say this or whatever. But the problem is that those types of memes and stuff end up creating, an environment where actual literal fascists that would run apologetics or defense for like genocide, mass murder, and that type of thing, they could post the same thing and get like thumbs ups and stuff on it. And people will often defend their rhetoric saying, oh, it's just memes. It's just jokes. And this connects right back to the, Epstein stuff and Steve Bannon, who very successfully made a large portion of young men very angry with this like disillusionment and like, oh, like make them support people that might say things that sound kind of fascist. And it's like, I feel like they're normalizing fascist rhetoric in our culture by depicting like this type of memification. the like Arthas did nothing wrong, Garrosh did nothing wrong. It's like you're literally using humor at this point to justify the actions and like genocide that these people did or mass murder that they did. And then if you call that out and you push back on it, they can say, "Oh, you're just being like too sensitive," or
It's just
what's that?
it's just a joke.
Right, it's just a joke. But like the Warhammer 40K. Let's just touch on this again since you brought it up earlier.
Can
Do
I
you
just
remember-
address what you said so far? Or...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because I definitely I agree with everything you said. But first of all, the whole Schrodinger's fascist thing, where I've said it before. If someone who's just joking is indistinguishable from someone that's like actually arguing for some fascist talking point, then you're both arguing for the fascist talking points. You're both laundering those points, that talking point, and contributing to fascism becoming more mainstreamed and more acceptable. So, Warcraft is definitely not the only community that has that problem. And you've moved the needle on me a bit because, like I said, I would never agree with anyone who said Arthas did nothing wrong. Of course he did. But if someone's like, well, Arthas was right up to like a certain point, that's where I could be like, yeah, I can see that. He was in an impossible position and he made mistakes, but I can see at least where he was trying to go. But yeah, you move the needle on me there, where I guess the point at which I'd say he crossed the point of no return and or crossed the red line is now earlier in my mind than maybe I thought as a kid when I played the game, which that's part of growing up. But I think the core thing that jumps out at me is the lesson that I think someone should take from the Warcraft games, the way the series of expansions and stuff that you're describing, is that when fascism rears its ugly head, when characters are like, oh, I'm protecting my people, and I want to make sure that my people are further ahead, and I need to strike first and stuff. Whether the threat is real or imagined, then that's where people die, and then it creates this cycle of abuse and cycle of revenge. And the natural from a writer's point of view, a matter of the plot, and just the world, the people learning lessons and wanting to improve their lives, they should want to come together and get along and work together. So I definitely think that's the lesson that should be taken. Obviously, it's not, because Warcraft Blizzard is in the business of making games. I think there's one other thing, but yeah, it's just frustrating that just like in the games, in the real world, people are so conservatives are so hung up on we have to punish our enemies, and there's the queer agenda trying to gay your kids or trans your kids and stuff. And it's just even if that were true, you're going about things the wrong way. But it's not true. You're just being manipulated. But yeah, go ahead and talk about Warhammer, and then I have one more thought I'd like to run by you.
Well, no, it's just that in Warhammer in real life, they ended up having a problem where people were showing up to the games and stuff like that, like the trading card, tournaments, and there was open white supremacist there, displaying Nazi tattoos and stuff like that, and it ended up causing a big stink where people withdrew from the tournament, and they're like, I'm not going to play here because I'm not going to play with someone like this. Then the creators of the game ended up having to release a statement kind of condemning fascism and saying that they will ban people if you show up with hate symbols and stuff on you. And I'm saying that why did that person with all those hate symbols on them and stuff like that, why did they feel so comfortable that they thought I can go to a tournament and just display these symbols of hate like swastikas as tattoos or whatever, and this is going to be something that is probably I will still be able to show up there, I'll still be able to compete, I'm still it's enough people will be entertained by this that it would be fine for me to do something like that. And it's because of the normalization of fascism within that community. It's because there was enough people in the community making excuses for the fascist ideology of certain characters that this guy thought that something like that was okay. And I end up seeing in WoW, and having talked to enough people in the game long enough, and talk to people when I'm running dungeons and stuff like that, that there is some subset of the fandom that will try to justify what Arthas did, or try and justify what Garrosh did, as if like, well, it's reasonable, mostly for this whatever reason. And I'm like, if anything, World of Warcraft has just made me even more ardently against the idea of kings and the idea of monarchy and the idea that like we should have people that just wield vast amounts of power over everyone else. It seems like a lot of times when we, normalize this, we end up seeing people now saying like Trump should be a Catholic monarch. I've seen people making this argument that Trump should just declare himself a religious monarch, and that would be best for our country, as if they can't learn any lessons at all from fantasy, or we can't look through history and see the things that have happened. And like a lot of fans of Warcraft are now mad that the Horde, so after the stuff with Garrosh, Vol'jin ended up becoming their chieftain. Vol'jin ends up leading them into like a slaughter. When the Legion returns, Vol'jin is wounded, then dies. He passes the War Chief mantle on to Sylvanas. Sylvanas then has the mantle as War Chief, leads the Horde into another massive combat, the Fourth War against the Alliance. And then it turns out at the end that she was just trying to like kill them all because she was being puppeted by a secret, even bigger bad person. It was a stupid storyline. Everyone hated it. It was Shadowlands. But after Shadowlands and Sylvanas is no longer the War Chief, the Horde is now ran by a council. They're like, no more War Chiefs. Like all the stuff that's happened in game that's like slaughtered all these people over all this time. They're like, no more War Chiefs. We're going to have a council now. And on the Alliance side, like Anduin has stepped down. I'll save all the backstory. But Anduin is not the king right now. He's not the High King. There's a council that's also running Stormwind. But my issue is that the writers of the game have utterly failed to show these councils doing really anything like meaningful. There's kind of a question like, who even is the leader of these factions anymore? And what I really hate that the current like expansions are doing, I hope they don't do this, but I can tell by the story beats that they've set up, because in the last expansion, Anduin comes back and he's like questing with some of the Alliance heroes, trying to like find the light again and find his way. And you can tell that they're setting up this thing of like, Anduin is going to, it's Return of the King, not this expansion, either this expansion or next expansion. Anduin will come back and take his rightful place as the High King of the Alliance once again, and it's going to be heroic and music swells and people love it. And if they, I hate that story so much. I hope they don't do that, because I would rather see these councils actually be effective and efficient. And the fact that they have these councils, and they have interesting characters on the council, but they don't have the council itself ever doing anything. And they just often depict these councils as kind of like very weak-willed, like liberal entities that it just seems like they can't do anything. Like, well, it's a council, so now there's just going to be bureaucracy. They're not really going to be able to do anything, and they're just going to be kind of inefficient, warm bodies without their governments really doing much of anything. Like, why don't we see them developing trade? Why don't we see them developing like, new villages together? Or why are there not discussions about how much better everything, right,
and stuff? Yeah. You can even just have it where like there's portals or there's bridges or whatever, and have like signs that say brought to you by the Horde High Council, or brought to you by the Alliance Governing Council, or whatever they're called.
I didn't say that. I'm saying that in the same way that
I'm saying that. I'm saying they could have that.
But what I would rather see is there were quest lines where you would occasionally do quests surrounding the leadership of the factions or whatever. They'd go out and do some quest line, and you'd be accompanying them and then like listening to them tell you their story and stuff like this. And some of that was like the most fascinating storytelling elements of prior expansions, like in Cataclysm, when you ride with Sylvanas, and Sylvanas is basically telling you why she's the Banshee Queen and why she's doing what she's doing, and how she's like trying to, defend her people and make sure that the Forsaken can like live in a world that wants to eradicate them. Like, it's one of my favorite dialogues in the game, and it's why I connected so much. Like, as my first character is a little Forsaken girl, like It was a Forsaken zombie. And I really like Undead, and I really liked the themes and stuff like around that. And I just thought it was like so good. I genuinely hate what they did to Sylvanas. But like Shadowlands had terrible writing in it. And I just feel like you could have quest lines where you're getting, getting quests from the council showing that like, hey, they are aware that there's some issue going on, and like you kind of like you could get quests from each one of them to go and help out like their people or help, like you talk about like a bridge or something. Instead of a bridge brought to you by whatever, you have them say, hey, go clear out this area so that we can now make a bridge for, that's going to like help our people have even more better trade or something. Like you could show them actually doing things. And it doesn't have to be like too complex. I mean, I know it's a role-playing game and stuff, but at the same time, you could show them like at least having some projects that they're working on instead of just showing them like only occasionally in cutscenes where it's like, oh, here's the leaders, and they're never doing anything, and they don't really seem relevant to anything. It's just wild.
No, I can appreciate that frustration, and yeah, I never really thought about it much. I mean, I haven't played WoW, so it makes sense. But yeah, anyone can become an undead. Once you're undead, you can't reproduce, and everybody hates the undead just like automatically because they're seen as like gross and sick, and also can spread their sickness to anyone. Like, yeah, that's I would bet my bottom dollar that the writers had no idea they were doing this, but that is in a lot of ways very analogous.
You cut out there. You're saying it's very analogous to what? I'm guessing he was going to say it's kind of analogous to like the queer experiences.
Yeah, sorry about that. My phone alarm went off, and that always mutes me on Discord, and I have to restart it. But yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was saying, and I'm sure the writers didn't intend to create that analogy, but now that it's there, I definitely see it.
Well, yeah, because and that's the other thing. I feel like at this point, they've introduced new models of other characters. It was kind of frustrating to me that the only models that Undead have ever gotten have been humans, when like we know that like the Undead fought against the Worgen and almost like, the Worgen became Worgen to stop themselves from being converted into Forsaken. But dwarves have also fought the Forsaken. Like theoretically, any army that's ever fought against them, like the Forsaken could have sent spies or whatever to go dig up corpses, bring them back, and then raise them as Forsaken. And it would even make more sense that, Sylvanas would want to do that. That way, all your Forsaken aren't just humans, and it's like you're from one kingdom. The more you diversify these people, and like you have Dwarf and Draenei and Pandaren and stuff like that, the more
Elves and stuff.
Right. Oh yeah, especially the elves. Like all Silvermoon is right there, and there's all the hundreds of whatever thousands of corpses from Arthas slaughtering his way through there. Right. It would end up diversifying your people enough that like it would help you connect with like the dwarves, for instance. Like, hey, don't come over here and slaughter all of us. Like, look, there's dwarves that are Forsaken too. Like, don't you think that like they could have a life? But like it's the bigotry of like they don't like their existence and that type of thing. And like for me, that really connected. Like when I first learned about WoW and like read about the factions and stuff like that, that's one of the reasons why we connected so much like with the undead. And like I don't know, maybe that's like psychologically why I connect with undead, like zombies and stuff so much. I hate vampires, but it's usually because they're rich more than anything else. At least as far as I can think of. When I think of vampires, I automatically think of like rich, entitled aristocrats, lording over people, victimizing people. I don't think of them as like, struggling for their place in life and that type of thing. But I don't know. I find the themes behind the Forsaken to be very interesting. And it just made me very mad that like they took the leader of the Forsaken and they're like, oh, she's actually just a genocidal maniac. Even worse than Garrosh, she wants to kill everybody on the planet to serve the Lord of Hell. Like, what? That's so stupid. And that was like never set up in her backstory. She's like stated her motivations multiple times. There were novels that were written that showed what her motivations were, where like you could literally see the character like internal monologue and stuff, you know what I mean? So it's just like Shadowlands seemed like it's like, oh no, all that stuff was just fake. All of it was fake. And you know, she's actually evil and serving the Dark Lord. And do you know what hurt me the most? Like honestly, like I legitimately was so fucking angry that like I stopped playing the storyline in WoW and I just started going and doing random quests and stuff. Do you know one of the things that like made me step that far back to be like, I've enjoyed this game so much, I no longer like this game anymore? It's because with everything that was going on, they literally turned around at the very end of it and they're like, oh, well, her spirit was wounded by Arthas's blade. And I forget whatever they call the type of sword, like a sorrow
Strathmore,
blade. I know, but they said it's a certain type of sword. It's like a soul blade or some shit like that. Because in Shadowlands, you meet the people in the afterlife. They end up having specific types of weapons that can like wound your soul itself. And like the blade consumes part of your soul or some shit when you're hit with it or when you're slain with it. And Uther is like a villain in the expansion and then ends up turning good again after you like help him reconnect with like fragments of his soul that have been severed from him. And they go do the same thing with Sylvanas, where Uther ends up finding out after they capture Sylvanas that like, oh, she's got the same kind of a soul wound that he had. And then it turns out that, guess what? Sylvanas has DID. Sylvanas has two personalities, and one of her identities is the, you know, Dark Ranger leader of the Forsaken, or one of the identities is the Ranger General that defended Silvermoon, and the other identity is the Banshee Queen, like leader of the Horde type of thing, and servant of this other evil entity. And like, there's an actual quest line where you go like in her head to like help these two parts of her communicate and shit like that, to like find out what's going on with her and everything else. So like at the end of all of this and all the time that we've been playing this game, for them to turn around at the very end of it to be like, oh yeah, and the reason why she's like an actual genocidal villain and all this stuff like that was because she has like DID. I logged on. Sorry, I don't want to get emotional about this. I just remember like logging on and I'm like, hey, I'm going to play through this quest line. I had friends in game whispering me that like they were sorry before I even started playing the quest line, or like suggesting to us that maybe we should skip this quest.
Good friends.
What's that?
I said good friends that care about you.
Oh, I know. It's just like,
I have a thought, but I don't want to interrupt you. But if you need a moment, I'll share my thought.
no, share your thought. I'm trying not to just like log off, you know?
No, I feel you. I mean, first of all, like that's like sick and pathetic and boring. Like, ooh, split personality. We haven't seen that before. And I was thinking while you were talking, like this is part of the reason that it's important to have diversity in your writer's room, because if that writer's room had like some LGBTQ people in there, they would have caught on to that and be like, hey guys, like the Forsaken are a massive like metaphor for queerness. So like we should be respectful of that and not like be like disrespectful and harmful with it. But it sounds like they had some pretty good writers that were maybe aware of that, maybe weren't, but they ended up screwing up because probably to cut costs, they probably got rid of their old writers and brought in some new writers that were way cheaper that didn't know what they were doing. And this was like basically Zack Snyder it up and was just like, yep, let's just have them fight each other for the sake of it, which is very disappointing because like a good game with a good storyline can really stick with you. But good gameplay on its own, even in an interesting universe, storyline's no darn good. Like Warcraft 1 was fine, Warcraft 2 was fine. I enjoyed the gameplay, I enjoyed the story, whatever. But like Warcraft 3, I really enjoyed. And partially because it was like, pretty well written in a lot of ways. And I mean, I was a kid, and it certainly wasn't like anything, like, it wasn't going to win any awards, but it was good. And it sounds like kind of went downhill from there.
Yeah, I mean, there was like good parts of it, periodically. Like we still enjoy the game overall. It's just, it really sucked to get to the like end of that expansion, like with everything else going on, to just be like, oh yeah, this character is mentally ill, like you are, and that's why they're, like a bad person. So
At least not every single genocidal person in World of Warcraft has DID, though, right?
right, only the absolute worst character that they ever wrote, only the character that like committed more genocide or murder than everyone else. Like what Sylvanas did was way worse than what Arthas did. She was way more effective, way more efficient, and way more successful than he was. She burned fucking Darnassus and like literally genocided the Night Elves, She like had a worldwide war going on between all these different factions and stuff like that, and was responsible for killing like way more people than Garrosh like ever dreamed of killing. So it's just like, and then of course there's all like the misogyny and shit that went with it too, of the way that she was portrayed, and she's a manipulative evil woman type of thing. I really hated it. Right, and I agree. I agree, Morgan. Like, I'm sorry you felt the same way. Yeah, it's extraordinarily insensitive for them to cover up their bad writing in a community that we belong to. I know. It's very frustrating. It's just like, and they don't, like, I already know, like, we're, like, trans people are 1% of, like, the population. People that have DID are, like, 1 to 2% of the population. But it's just like, oh, so that makes it fine to just like depict us as like the worst fucking like people imaginable, even though most people that have DID like are all traumatized. Like we have DID because we were abused ourselves as kids. And it's like, the game that I would primarily use for like my escapism and stuff, to turn around and be like, oh, actually, the person that is like the most evil, wicked piece of shit ever is actually like you, we're depicting you. It really hurt, especially because that's like the Forsaken leader, so I already had like the themes of like queerness that I kind of like related to the faction and stuff. It just made me so fucking angry.
Not to mention, she's also like who she is as a result of trauma, because she was literally killed while she was defending her homeland from Arthas.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you're like, oh, but Arthas is like a cis het guy with like blonde hair and stuff. It's like, yeah, but y'all fucking gave him the out by saying, oh, like he put the crown of domination on, so he didn't go do all the genocidal stuff, like the massively genocidal stuff, until he was mind whammied like by this crown. With Garrosh is an orc. That's not a human that you're depicting. And Garrosh was like so cartoonishly like hyper aggressive and shit for so long that it's like, and it's his aggressiveness and bloodthirstiness that like makes that character bad. All the other big bads in the universe are like vampire lords, demons, and that type of thing. So like, I don't know. And they also like for so long, they kept having Sylvanas in storylines that would make you like sympathetic to her and to show like she's actually struggling with this, or she's like unhappy with being dead, but then like there's other times where she looks at them as like her people, and they suffer together, that type of thing. It's very frustrating. I'm going to take a short break to go to the bathroom and try to like freshen up before I go into the segment about like Christian ethics, because like I meant to like actually do a segment on this and to have it be kind of like impactful and stuff, and now I feel like I'm just so upset, and like, oh, you're crying and stuff. It's so funny, like, I don't want that. I don't want to be portraying myself as that in that section, because like I know that they're going to look at anything they can to like criticize us for, and obviously if we're like sad or whatever, they're like, oh, you're depressed or what the fuck ever. because a lot of these people are
Yeah,
just like
totally.
scumbags.
Go freshen up. Put yourself together. I enjoyed the conversation, although I obviously didn't mean to direct it in this direction. But yeah, I'll vamp a little bit while you go, and then once you're back, I'll log off, and you can talk about Christian morality.
Yeah, sounds good. I feel bad. I didn't mean for it to go that way either, but I guess that it was like also like more impactful on us than we realized, because like I didn't realize it was going to upset me to even talk about it. Sorry about that, but I'll be back in a minute.
Yeah, you're good. So one of the things, and I can't see the chat, so if anyone's typing, I don't know what you're saying. But one of the things that crossed my mind while we were talking is like, I think about superheroes and like in DC Comics and Marvel Comics and stuff. And one of the narratives that sometimes is told is the idea that, hey, should these superheroes be regulated by the government and be answerable to the government, or should they maintain their independence and be able to like fight bad guys and stuff without having to go through the United Nations or go through the president or whatever? As a kid, I was always like, yeah, obviously they need to maintain their independence because then they can go kick butt. Also, like, you know, Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman are like good people and they're the good guys, whereas like governments can be pretty corrupt and stuff. And then when I got older, I was like, oh no, actually, like Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman might be great, but what happens if Superman dies and Wonder Woman retires and Batman obviously dies and there's future generations of heroes and you have the Justice League, but like run by someone who's less like it could very easily turn into the Justice Lords situation where they're taking over the world. So no, you don't want to have that kind of unchecked power dominating everything. In fact, like I don't even think it's a good idea to have a Justice League at all because it's just too much power concentrated in the hands of like 5 to 7 to 12 people. Even when there's like 30, 40 auxiliary members, it's just they're way too powerful. But they live in a universe where like you never know when Darkseid or some demon or some alien invasion is going to come along and try to like conquer the planet or kill everyone or do all this terrible stuff. And so as a result, yeah, having superheroes and especially having the Justice League, like when you live in a world with those kinds of threats, it makes sense that you want to have like a force capable of meeting them. And what frustrates me is when like a conservative will look at like superhero movies and comic books. I was more talking about comic books, but like this is especially true for Marvel movies with all the military iconography, where conservatives will look at that and watch those movies and be like, yeah, the military, they're kicking butt, they're the good guys, they're saving the day from like Thanos and all these threats. And that's why it's important to have that strong military and be able to protect and be able to whatever. And it's like, yeah, but in real life, there is no Thanos. There is no alien invasion. Like the military and all this power is used to maintain the strength of capitalism and basically bully and or conquer developing nations so that they are forced to allow their resources and their labor to be exploited by Western countries and Western corporations. Like Smedley Butler is a former American Marine. I think he fought in like World War I and a couple other wars, but I think he died in like the 1930s. I could be wrong. But he wrote a book called War is a Racket, and he basically makes the argument that like the whole time he was a soldier fighting in all these different wars, I think he fought in the American Philippines War or like, and he said basically he was a gangster. His job was to protect Western businesses, and that's the whole point of every war that he fought in. I think that there's a lot of truth to that. So as much as I enjoy superhero genre because of the stories and of the characters, but also just the idea like of a superhero is basically a person who has privilege using their privilege to help people. And I love that idea. But it's also the story where people with a lot more power are able to like control that power and use it the way they see fit. And I think that democratizing that power is a lot more important. I'd rather see, instead of billionaires deciding to fund different charities in order to like launder their reputation, but these charities might feed some people, but aren't actually addressing the root cause of their hunger because the billionaires don't want to upset the system. Whereas instead, we the people controlled those resources and directed those resources to actually improving things, then I think the world would be in a better place because we have different motivations than they do. It sounds like Zoe, are you back, or did I hear some clicking?
Yeah, we are back, and thank you for like
Okay.
vamping for a second in chatting. And I agree with
My
you, by
pleasure.
the way, with the superhero stuff. Like, I feel like, and I wrote an urban fantasy, and in the urban fantasy, there's like superheroes and stuff like that. And the character that's being brought on, that's being asked to be a superhero, she initially turns it down, and she says like, I don't want to be part of some super police force. Like, no, thank you. And like, I framed it like that on purpose of her calling it like a super police, because in just the sense of like the way that allies heroes are often portrayed and stuff like that. But then like I also have like private corporations that have their own like heroes, like their own teams or whatever. And it's like the questionable, in a world with superheroes, corporations would have their own superhero teams. You know what I mean? Because they're paying them well enough. And it's like, it's not dystopian, but I have the heroes that are like actually going around saving most people are ones that are essentially like are like working with like, you know, they're working with the government type of thing, except they are, they're still on their own to kind of go around and do things, but there's like contracts that they have agreements with, etc., to like, do their superheroing, where like they're supposed to be helping the common people, like that's what they care about. And like that's what I wanted to have out of a superhero story, instead of what's going on traditionally, where it's like either corporations own them and they're in the back pocket of corporations, or they're like billionaires going and just doing whatever they want to. Like I agree with you. I just want to touch on a couple of the comments real quick. Morgan says it's bullshit that most conservatives seem to claim that DID isn't even real. Absurd, like claiming PTSD doesn't exist. No, I agree. It's really frustrating. And if you go and look at the research that's been done on it, like it's factually, like people exist like us. Like it is a thing. And like if you go and look at the literature and you read through it, I don't know anyone that takes himself serious as a professional in the field of psychology that has expertise on this that would say like this doesn't exist. Like it just, that doesn't happen. Are there people that like malinger? I mean, sure, there's people that malinger, any condition. That doesn't mean that like the condition itself doesn't exist. And like the more we learn about the human brain, the more that we do research into different psychology, I'm sure that we will, like see PTSD, for instance, complex PTSD. Right now, it doesn't exist in the DSM-5, but in the DSM-6, it will probably be included in it, or a disorder that matches the criterion for complex PTSD will probably be in there. And that's just because it's like, that there are enough patients that have like CPTSD that match the symptoms that, that they are looking for, and that, that you can offer us treatment and we show like a marked better life by getting treatment for it. At one point in time, none of these illnesses were in the DSM. And like, they get added because of the consensus of the experts that like, yeah, we are dealing with people that have these problems. And like, DID is just one of these things that like, it exists. Do people get it wrong a lot? Yeah. And do they misunderstand what it is? Sure. And media doesn't help with portrayals of it. Like when you just have like completely inaccurate portrayals. Well, then ironically, a superhero movie comes out, or a superhero show like Moon Knight, which does a better job of depicting DID than like most other like stuff that's come before it, even though it's superhero stuff and there's still obvious exaggerations in it. And like people that have DID don't, like, their eyes don't roll back in our head, and like we don't shake and shit when we switch. We just switch, and people either notice a difference in our tone, they notice a difference in our expression, they notice a difference in our affect, they might notice a difference in our body language, or like the way that we refer to ourselves. But either way, like a switch happens. Anyway, I want to thank you, Shane, for coming on and speaking to me. I'm going to get into the main crux of why I wanted to stream tonight and discuss like Christian ethics and morality. If you want to like come up and talk about that as well, that's fine. But I just want to like run through like some stuff that I was thinking about, and we're gonna go like point by point here, and I want to cover a lot of stuff that like you may have heard of, and I want to cover a lot of stuff that like you might not be aware of before. But I'm going to tear down Christian ethics like from the ground up. And we're just going to go through this stuff like point by point by point, okay? So I want to just start this segment by saying this. I don't think that Christian ethics are a serious thing. I think it is farcical at this point that very often Christians bring up the question of morality or ethics to atheists in a lot of debates, or they will claim that they have ethics via like their God, but atheists do not have access to morality or those ethics. They'll say that our morality and our ethics are subjective, while theirs are objective because they come from God and God is unchanging, etc. Just going to adjust this a little bit. All right, so let's just discuss it. Like, first of all, most of the time whenever Christians are referring to their ethics, they're referring to like divine command theory. Like, this is just what, God says is true, therefore it must be true. That's what they're actually talking about when they say their ethics. I'm not like reading a script or whatever. This is off the top of the dome. I've got some tabs open because I want to reference very specific verses in the Bible. And I hope that if there are any Christians here, there's a couple of things that I just want to get out of the way first. Number one, I want you to understand that I'm not referring to all Christians here. I don't mean that every single Christian doesn't have access to an ethical framework. That's not what I'm talking about. There are some Christians, a lot of them, that seem like they have ethical systems that work just fine. They have ethical frameworks like that would be like secular humanism, just like an atheist would. They just credit it coming from God. So I don't mean that all Christians are bad people. And Hannah says the moment that they claim abortion is murder and thus bad, and the same brain or in the same breath will make baby paste if God says so. Yeah, exactly. That's divine command theory. God says something is moral, therefore it's moral. And this is whenever I say like they don't have an ethical framework. If your ethics are God says so, therefore it is acceptable or it becomes moral, then that means that there is no behavior that you could engage in that wouldn't be ethical or moral because as long as God says so. And there's the whole Justin from Deconstruction Zone came with this baby paste analogy where he'll ask people questions like leading up to baby paste. He said that he came up with it because it was like one of the most extreme things that he could think of. And he was surprised at how many Christians would bite the bullet and they would agree to go not only kill babies, but to make them into baby paste if God commanded them to do so. And they said like they thought that it would be ethical. Some people might think this is a meme or something, but let's just treat this seriously for one moment. What would make someone say something like that? What would make them say something like that is if they believed that their ethics and morality emanated from God. So God is the arbiter of morality. God makes things. He's the truth maker. If something is or is not moral within their framework. That being because he gets to arbitrarily decide if something is or is not moral, they think that if something is commanded to them by this deity, then it becomes morally justified. The problem with this, and for Christians that follow this line of thinking, I need to stress this to you because it is embarrassing that this comes up over and over again. I've heard so many people calling into shows and talking to atheists and so many debates that I've done where a Christian will claim that their ethics come from God, so they're objective, and our ethics are reliant upon ourselves, or they don't know where it comes from, therefore it is subjective. I need y'all to stop saying this, all right? I'm not a philosopher. I don't have a degree in philosophy, but let me explain this very easily. If something is objective, that means that it is not stance dependent. If something is stance dependent, all right, that means that it's like dependent on a stance that a mind would have. So if it is objective, that means that it is not dependent on a mind. Notice I didn't say a human mind. I said a mind. So it doesn't matter if it's an alien. It doesn't matter if it's Superman. It doesn't matter if it's God himself. If the thought, if the truth maker is originating from a mind, it is not objective. All right? It's because you are confusing objective with true. Those are not the same things. Truth is just a predicate of a proposition, okay? Truth is something that a proposition could hold. There are different frameworks for truth as well, all right? You could say like truth is that which corresponds with reality. That's a correspondence theory of truth. You could say like truth is that which is, you know, is aligns with a set of beliefs. And as long as the, you know, propositions align with the other beliefs that you have and it's built on the same beliefs from the foundation up, then it's true in like a coherence theory. There are plenty of theories of truth that you can engage in, all right? There's like pragmatism and everything else. Don't confuse objectivity with truth. Objectivity just means that something is true independent of a mind. So like the earth exists. The sun exists. That's true, stance independently, all right? Because it actualizes. I'm sorry for some of the philosophy language here, but it exists within reality, and I'm not making a metaphysical claim about what reality is, okay? It doesn't matter if this is a simulation or whatever. Earth exists, the sun exists. It's not dependent on our minds in order for it to exist. Even if you think that God created everything, then you think that, well, God created these things, therefore it would be objectively true that they were created and that they exist. It would still, that doesn't mean that God's views on morality is objective. It is subjective. Just like our thoughts on our morality is going to be subjective. Now, there are atheists that are moral realists, and they believe that there are accurate moral, like true moral facts about the universe, or just true moral facts in general. I've heard some of people like make these arguments before. I'm not necessarily convinced by them. I still personally feel that morals and ethics, for the most part, are subjective. They are. They're stance dependent. But that's putting that aside. I don't want to like delve down into that because I could have those discussions and I could have those arguments with secularists, okay? Atheists are the ones that typically are going to be arguing, you know, from like, we can have the arguments on moral realism and, you know, subjective versus objective, etc. That's not coming from Christianity. Christianity is often divine command theory. The Bible says something, it's true. God says something, therefore it must be true. It must be objective. So let's just, as the foundation, good faith coming into this conversation. I've already said, I think my morals are subjective. And I think that your morals are also subjective. And if the morals come from God and there was a mind issuing moral commands, that would also be subjective because it's dependent on that entity's mind. So at a ground level, let's agree here. That's what subjective is. That's what objective is in this context while I'm using it. I'm the appraiser, all right? And I'm telling you how I'm appraising these terms. When I say subjective, that's what I mean. When I say objective, that's what I mean. So if you view it any way differently, if you're a moral realist, do not project the way that you view it on to me. I've given you what I mean and why I do not think that God's morality qualifies as objective. If you disagree, you can leave a comment down below and maybe I'll make another video, or you can tune into any one of my streams, which I do fairly often. And if you want to debate this, I would be glad to talk to you then. But let's just move on from there, because not only do I think that Christian morality it is a nonsensical concept, I think that it's a farcical joke. And I think that your God, if your God were to exist, is not only not ethical and not only had all of its views would be subjective. I also think it is actively evil. And I think that your God would be like all over the Epstein files, you know? Ironically enough, if you search God, it comes up like 22,000 times in the Epstein files. But I'm going to make an argument that your God is actually so bad that if your God were to exist, your God would actually be, if Jesus existed as that God would be in the Epstein files. And that God has done much worse than what's in the Epstein files. I'm going to lay that as a foundation, okay? Your deity as a Christian is as bad as Epstein, but mega worse. Okay, your God is like Epstein times infinity. Okay, a million, like Epstein times infinity equals your Christian God. I'm going to lay out the case why I think this. I don't think every Christian is bad. I think that plenty of Christians use secular frameworks for their ethical systems. I feel like plenty of Christians have virtue. Okay, just like I feel like secular people have virtue. But that God in that book is evil. And I'm going to explain why. I'm doing this again, because I'm so tired of hearing from Christians that their God is their system is moral, and how do we as atheists have morals? I want to just point out for a second how evil your God is. And we're just going to go point by point on some of this stuff. So here you go. If you have a Bible, you can go ahead and you can turn to 2 Samuel 12. And what we're going to find is the story is essentially Nathan has been sent to talk to David and tell David about punishments that God is going to levy against him for sleeping with Bathsheba. All right. So David wanted to sleep with Bathsheba. Bathsheba was married to someone else. So David was the king, arranged to have her husband put on the front lines in a battle. Her husband is killed. Therefore, she's widowed, so that David could then sleep with her. So as a direct result of David, this man died for his lust. He ends up having sex with Bathsheba, and she gets pregnant with child. Now, God decides that he's going to lay punishments. The first punishment that he gives David is that the baby is going to get like sick and then die, and that happens. So here's God directly killing a baby because he's mad at David. But I want to really highlight the second punishment that God sends after David. Okay. And this is in verse 11. It says, quote, "This is what the Lord says. Out of your own household, I'm going to bring calamity on you. Before your eyes, I will take your wives and give them to one who is close to you, and he will sleep with your wives in broad daylight. You did it in secret, but I will do this thing in broad daylight before all of Israel." And then in the follow-up sections, we end up having this come true. One of David's own sons, I think it's Absalom, ends up going and taking several of David's wives, 10 of them, and ends up graping them on top of the house where like all the people to see while David is gone, and he's basically leading an insurrection against his father and trying to seize power. When I read this in the Bible for the first time, I felt like this was one of the most wicked things I had ever read a fictional character do, right? If you can tell by the books in the background, right? I've read a lot growing up. And this, I had almost never read a villain as monstrous as this. What this story is, and apologists will try and come up with every explanation, but God says directly that he is the one that is raising up this trouble against David. And he is going to have Absalom grape the 10 wives of David, these women. Now, this would have been culturally unacceptable because this is one of David's sons sleeping with some of his wives. And we know that from the Levitical law, this was forbidden. This was something that's not supposed to happen. But God says that he's going to make this happen. And we also know that the women wouldn't have gone along with it, because I've heard apologists, as disgusting as it is, who are also grape apologists in this case, trying to say, well, how do we know that they didn't want to go along with it? And the answer is first of all, that's their husband's son. And then also, it ends up being that the punishment for doing that is death. All right? So unless they all wanted to die as well, they would not have done that. So this is God directly ordering SA against women, endorsing it, and saying that he's going to be the reason of it. So this is him causing women to be assaulted. All right? Now, and essentially endorsing like grape. So that is, part of assaulting women, right? Yeah, and you're saying, yeah, it's such a vile and unjust thing being passed down. Oh, 100%. But we are just getting started on this. Because like I said, we were going to have like connections between like, what Epstein was doing and what this God was doing. So are y'all aware, let's see, in the Bible, there is a story about Moses. And Moses goes into battle, some stuff happens, and then he basically, like his forces come back with some boys and girls that they captured. So the Israelites went out, slaughtered a bunch of people, and they end up capturing some people in this army, and they bring people back. So we're going to go to Numbers 31 and go down to verse... we're going to go to verse 8. We're going to start at 8, okay? I'm just going to quote this so that y'all have the context, because Christians always say that we take things out of context, all right? And I'm telling you, the things I'm presenting to you right now are not out of context. And if you go and read the verses and you read before and after them, you will see that what I'm reporting to you is accurately what's in the book. I'm just going to be reading the Bible for a minute, so just forgive me for having to do this, but I don't want people to say that I'm misrepresenting this. So it says, starting at verse 8, quote, and this is the King James Version. I'm choosing the King James Version because I know that most Christians that I grew up with that were Baptist all read the King James Version. And I think the NIV and NSRV are better translations, but a lot of them want King James. So let's just look at what King James says. It says, and they threw the kings of Midian beside the rest of them that were slain, namely Evi and Rechem, Zur and Hur and Reba, 5 kings of Midian, Balaam, also the son of Beor, they slew with the sword. And the children of Israel, so the Israelites, took all the women of Midian captives and their little ones, and took the spoil of all their cattle and all their flocks and all their goods. And they burned all their cities wherein they dwelt, and all their goodly castles with fire. And they took all the spoil and all the prey, both of men and of beasts. And they brought the captives and the prey and the spoil unto Moses and Eleazar the priest, and unto the congregation of the children of Israel, unto the camp at the plains of Moab, which are by Jordan near Jericho. And Moses and Eleazar the priest and all the princes of the congregation went forth to meet them without the camp. And Moses was wroth with the officers of the host, with the captains over thousands and captains over hundreds, which came from the battle. Now, pay attention to this part. And Moses said unto them, have ye saved all the women alive? Behold, these caused the children of Israel, through the counsel of Balaam, to commit trespasses against the Lord in the matter of Peor, and there was a plague among them, among the congregation of the Lord. Now, therefore, kill every male among the little ones, so commanding the slaughter of little boys, and kill every woman that hath known man by lying with him. So kill every woman that's not a virgin, but keep all the women children, so all the little girls that have not known a man by lying with him, keep alive for yourselves. So this is Moses talking on behalf of God, commanding the slaughter of innocent children and innocent women, and then telling them to keep the virgin little girls for themselves as spoils of war. So this is essentially God rubber stamping sex trafficking of children right here, and encouraging his people to keep them for their brides, like children. And we are supposed to, once again, take Christian ethics seriously, divine command theory serious, of this monstrous entity. It's difficult to put into words how disgusted and terrible this is from an ethical standpoint. Like, in all of literature, I don't remember like Darth Vader doing things that were like this evil. Like, there are other fantasy characters that are supposed to be like the great big evil in fantasy, but I find very often that those dark entities pale in comparison to the Christian God. And remember, Christians will often, frame themselves as being pious and holier than thou, and condemn all of us for not sharing their belief in their God, or for being queer, or for being trans, for living a different lifestyle, for being a different race than what their preferred race is. But let's just stay on this, and let's go to Genesis 7. All right. So in Genesis, we find several things going on, one of which is the story of Noah. And in Genesis 7, if you scroll down here, this is where God has told Noah to go get a boat, and he's going to flood the earth, and there's going to be a great flood, and he's to take, 14 of clean animals and 2 of every unclean animal, so many birds, etc. Put them on his boat with him and his family. And I think there's Noah, and I think there's like 7 more family members. I think there's like 8 of them total. Anyway, let's look down to verse. Let's start at verse 17. All right. So this is Genesis 7. It's going to be verse 17. For 40 days, the flood kept coming on earth, and as the waters increased, they lifted the ark high above the earth. The waters rose and increased greatly on earth, and the ark floated on the surface of the water. They rose greatly on the earth, and all the high mountains under the entire heavens were covered. The waters rose and covered the mountains to a depth of more than 15 cubits. Every living thing that moved on land perished. Birds, livestock, wild animals, all the creatures that swam over the earth, and all mankind. Everything on dry land that had the breath of life in its nostrils died. Every living thing on the face of the earth was wiped out. People and animals and the creatures that move along the ground and the birds were wiped from earth. Only Noah was left, and those with him on the ark. The waters flooded the earth for around 150 days. Yeah. It says a modern tale would say that his cruelty is absurd and unrealistic. Yeah, if you wrote that in a book these days, people would say like, this is just, it's too monstrously evil. Like, it's so evil, it's ridiculous. But this would be like, this would be like the single largest genocide like ever committed. This is your God directly drowning people across the world. The apologetics that you will get for this is typically going to be something along the lines of, yeah, but these people had it coming. I've heard that they were Nephilim. They had miscegenation with demons or fallen angels. They will all say like, well, they were wicked or they were evil or whatever. Remember, I just read the verses, okay? Don't let them gaslight you, because I want you to put your thinking cap on for a second. So in all of the world, how many babies were there among these different populations? And you mean to tell me that these babies were somehow so evil they deserve to be drowned? Why did all the animals need to be drowned and killed? What about all the innocent children? Not just babies, but just kids. What about all the innocent women and men that were following the things that they were supposed to follow and do the things that they're supposed to do, and God still just drowns them all? The story is absurd on its face that the right thing that God could do wasn't to redeem these people, but was to just mass slaughter all of them. So when they say like, well, God isn't for abortion, like, first of all, we'll get to that in a little bit. The Bible does not condemn abortion in any part of it whatsoever. And at one part, it talks about if you injure a woman and she ends up having a miscarriage, you only have to pay her like a couple shillings, because it treats losing a child, like causing a miscarriage, as the same thing as a property crime. It does not count like pregnant like fetuses as people. It doesn't. But this God drowned and killed everything on the planet. That includes babies. That includes children. All right. And this is God directly, not him commanding it, not him sending angels out. This is him directly doing it. This is him taking these babies' faces and pushing it in the water. And this is him murdering babies. Okay. This is God himself murdering how many hundreds of thousands, millions of innocent people. How many people are on the earth in the fairy tale? That would be your Christian ethics. That's your God directly doing this. And we're supposed to believe that other gods, are bad, Moloch and all this sort of thing. These are bad, evil pagan deities, and they're bad because they order human sacrifice. Well, your God himself genocided entire legions of babies all by himself. All right. And in order to justify a lot of what they were doing, later on in the murders and stuff that the Israelites were doing while they're traveling around the desert and just slaughtering other tribes. Part of the explanation for this is that there's like this constant corruption in mankind. And they kind of touched on this from like Adam and Eve with the knowledge of like good and evil. We'll get there in a minute. But I want to touch real quick on the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. Yeah, I thank you for being here, Hannah. You can I'm going to cut this as a segment and you can watch it back later. But just stick into this real quick. So in this story, God decides that he's going to go and punish the city of Sodom and Gomorrah because there's all these wicked people in there. The same old story. They made God angry. God's wrath is going to fall upon them. God tells Lot and his family to get out of there. He's going to destroy the place. Now, I just want to talk for a second about some of the pettiness that this God does. So God is like, hey, Lot, you and your family are actually okay. Y'all are decent people. Get out of here. I'm going to nuke this town. They leave the town and God rains fire upon the town and destroys it. And yet in the story, and if you're wanting to know in the Bible, just turn to Genesis 19 and then we're going to look at verses 23 through 26. All right. This is by the time Lot reached Zoar, the sun had risen over the land. Then the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the heavens. So this is once again God directly killing people. Thus he overthrew those cities and the entire plain, destroying all those living in the cities and also the vegetation in the land. Now, this is the part I want to draw your attention to. But Lot's wife looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. So that he said to leave and don't look back. She looked back, and for the crime of looking at what are you doing over there, he turns her into a pillar of salt. All right. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know, in what world would it make sense to say that punishment for looking backward, looking back at something, is worth killing someone over. Once again, she's an innocent woman. Obviously, he didn't want to kill her in the city. He said, hey, go, you're innocent. Oh, you looked backward, I'm going to kill you. And this is just another example of God's pettiness in murdering people. He will literally murder you for nothing. And for those of you oh no, he said, don't look back. And she looked back. Okay. How about the story of, and this is going to just sound funny, the story of Uzzah, all right? That's the son of Abinadab, all right? And in the story, this incident takes place. It's in 2 Samuel 6, and it's in 1 Chronicles 13, all right? they're transporting the Ark of the Covenant with and during the process of moving the Ark, it becomes unsteady because of the oxen, and it goes to fall off onto the ground. And Uzzah, who's like a devoted servant of the Lord and like hasn't done anything wrong, tries to save the Ark of the Covenant from falling and hitting the ground. So he reaches out and catches it by the corner to push it up to stabilize it. And God strikes him dead for touching the Ark. Doesn't explain why, just kills him outright. We can also look at, let's look at Leviticus 10, verses 1 through 3. Okay? We're going to talk about Aaron's sons. This is Nadab and Abihu. Right? These kids made the grave sin. Why did they deserve death? Because they put the wrong incense in an incense burner, and they were calling it an unauthorized fire that the Lord had not commanded to be put in the incense. So God kills both of these kids right on the spot, and then commands that his parents do not mourn him, and says that if the parents mourn their children, he will wipe out the city. He'll kill them all if they mourn them. So wait, let's see. Let's go to 2 Kings, and this is going to be chapter 2, verses 23 through 25. In this story, there's the prophet Elisha is like traveling around, and some kids make fun of him for being bald. I'm just going off the top of my head on this one because I've read this so many times. They call him, like, they say, like, go away baldy, something like that. So it says that then Elisha calls down a curse of the Lord onto these children, and the Lord brings forth 2 she-bear from the wilderness that maul these 42 children and rip them to ribbons, maul them to death for making fun of a bald person. This is once again another example of God mass murdering children because they made a joke about a bald person. Now, I would normally think like any one of these stories should be enough to demonstrate the pettiness of this God. But the reason why I'm going to keep coming down on this over and over and over is because I hear once again from Christians that they are the moral ones and their God is moral and we are immoral. We are the immoral ones. Sorry, I'm still sick, but I'm feeling better. So then we get to Pharaoh, and God hardens Pharaoh's heart when Moses requests to have the Israelites released as they're enslaved in Egypt. This is a famous one. God hardens Pharaoh's heart so that Pharaoh changes his mind to not release his people, because God decides that he wants to show off more with other curses. And what's God's final curse? He kills all of their firstborn. He sends an angel of death to go out and kill every single one of the firstborn of the Egyptians. Once again, God sending someone out to mass murder children. Right, yeah, kids being mean just because they're kids doesn't mean that they deserve to be murdered. Oh, 100%. It's just ridiculous. But let's just keep touching on this. So I've given several examples of God killing kids. 100%, the Christian God kills children. He doesn't care, okay? So after the story with Lot and them escaping, I just want to point out that there is a story here in the Bible where Lot's daughters get him drunk, and the eldest daughter sleeps with him to get pregnant, and then the younger daughter gets him drunk on wine and sleeps with him again and also gets pregnant. which seems like strange, like God couldn't just stop that from happening, but whatever. They're saying that they want to do that because there was no other men around after Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed, and they wanted their line to continue. This is just a justification for where the Moabites come from and the Ammonites come from, and why Israel is their enemy and they're evil and justified in killing them and everything else. So like just straight up justifying killing people because of who their ancestors were. But the Bible condemns slavery. Not only is the Christian God okay with it, the Christian God gives explicit instructions. We're going to go to Leviticus 25, and we're going to go to starting at verse 35. I'm just going to read you a full context of it, right? It says, if any of your fellow Israelites become poor and are unable to support themselves among you, help them as you would a foreigner and stranger so they can continue to live among you. Do not take interest or any profit from them, but fear your God so that they may continue to live among you. You must not lend them money at interest or sell them food at profit. I am the Lord your God, etc. If any of your fellow Israelites become poor and sell themselves to you, do not make of them work as slaves. They are to be treated as hired works or temporary residents among you. They are to work for you until the year of Jubilee. This is Israelites. If Israelites are among you, then they and their children are to be released, and they will go back to their own clans and to the property of their ancestors. Because the Israelites are my servants whom I brought out of Egypt, they must not be sold as slaves. Do not rule over them ruthlessly, but fear your God. Now, pay very close attention to verse 44. Your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you. From them you may buy slaves. You may also buy some of the temporary residents living among you and members of their clans born in your country, and they will become your property. The word property is important right there because that's chattel slavery. You can bequeath them to your children as inherited property, and you can make them slaves for life, but you must not rule over your fellow Israelites ruthlessly. So here's God laying down laws and foundations for this, where you can purchase people that are from nations around you that may have sold themselves into slavery. So if somebody's selling their daughter into slavery, you can purchase the daughter from them. No issues with that whatsoever. It's only saying that you must not rule over your Israelites ruthlessly. And it is saying property specifically, because this is chattel slavery, not indentured servitude, chattel slavery. They are property. You can pass them down to your family members. They can be inherited. I could pull up the specific verse. I'm going to look real quick because I didn't prepare this verse off the top of my head. I should have pulled it up, but let's see. So here we go. In Exodus 21, so it's chapter 21, verses 20 through 21, okay? It says, anyone who beats their male or female slave with a rod must be punished if the slave dies as a direct result. But they are not to be punished if the slave recovers after a day or two, since their slave is their property. So you can beat them as long as they don't die within a day or two. I guess if they die on the third or fourth day, then, I mean, who knows what caused it, right? You beating them with a rod and laying them bedbound where they lingered in bed for, 2 days, and they expire on the third or fourth day. That wasn't you. That must have been something else. But if they die in the first day or two, you can face punishment. But if they recover within the first day or two, then you face no punishment whatsoever. It's only if they die later on after after day two, then you might be in trouble. Like, it's just ridiculous. Once again, you can beat them as long as they don't die in a day or two. If they die on the third or fourth day, you're fine. Okay, let's turn over here to Jeremiah 19, and we're going to go over verse 9. This verse is something that I've also found Christians seem not to be aware of very much. In this verse, God says that he is going to make these people eat their children. He's going to make them cannibalize their children. All right. So verse 9, actually, let's start with verse 8. God says, "And I will make the city desolate and a hissing. Everyone that passeth thereby shall be astonished and hiss because of all the plagues thereof. And I will cause them to eat the flesh of their sons and the flesh of their daughters, and they shall eat every one the flesh of his friend in the siege and straits with which their enemies, and that they seek their lives, shall straiten them." So he's talking about he's going to make them besieged and attacked so much, he's going to rain plagues upon them, that he's going to make these people cannibalize their children and their friends. He's going to make them cannibalize one another. That's how bad his wrath is going to be upon them. But remember, it's the queer people that are terrible. It's us that are the ones that are unethical. Well, this is literally supposed to be where the source of their morality comes from. And by the way, let's just talk real quick about even the concept of like original sin, right? So in the concept of original sin, the entire story behind this is that God tells Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden not to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. All right. He says, don't do it. Don't eat that thing. Right. And then Satan comes along supposedly as a snake. I know there's disputed, but let's just go with it. Right. Satan shows up and say, "Hey, yo, if you eat that tree, you're not going to die." All right. And they go ahead and they eat the tree. And it turns out that they did not die that day. All right. God said that you would perish that day. They did not perish that day. God is a liar right here. But also, let's just go to Genesis 3, and let's go to verse 21. So they eat the fruit. It says, "The Lord God made garments of skin for Adam and his wife and clothed them. And the Lord God said, the man has now become like one of us, knowing good and evil. He must not be allowed to reach out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever." So if the tree is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and Adam and Eve did not gain knowledge of good or evil until they ate from the tree when God said not to, and now they're going to be like punished with their descendants and everything else. I'm sorry. How does this make sense to punish them? You're saying that they did not know good and evil. And then when you say, well, don't eat from this, don't eat from this tree. And if you say, why should we not eat from the tree? You're like, well, that would be bad. I don't want you to do that. How could they know that they shouldn't eat from it if they don't know the difference between good and evil? They would be like, if you believe that there's an age of consent. So like if someone commits a crime and they're so young that you think like they might not know better, like let's say like a 4-year-old goes and takes something, or a 3-year-old goes and plucks something off of someone else's, like picks up a candy bar at a store. Do you think that 3 or 4-year-old should be thrown in prison for theft? Or would you say like, I mean, clearly not. They don't know any better. They don't know what they're doing. They just picked up a candy bar, right? In the same way, Adam and Eve here did not have knowledge of good and evil. They would be like children in the sense of, they would be so young that they'd be, they would not be of the age of reckoning, like of accountability. They don't know what they're doing because they don't have the knowledge of good and evil until they eat this fruit. But God curses them forever. Women to have painful reproductive cycles and all this stuff. And it's like, oh, now all your descendants, you're all going to die and everything else. It's just ridiculous on its face. If you disagree with any of this, by the way, if you think you can defend this stuff, feel free to defend it in the comments. I find that, it's ridiculous, right? All right. So God says several times that you have to follow over and over and over and over, that you have to follow all of his commandments constantly in Deuteronomy 28. If we go to verse 58, it says, if you do not follow all of the words of this law, which are written in this book, and do not revere this glorious and awesome name, the Lord your God, the Lord will send fearful plagues on you and your descendants, harsh and prolonged disasters, and severe and lingering illnesses. So this is somebody who just like puts plagues on you if you end up like making him angry. He causes prolonged disasters. So here's him taking credit for disasters. All right. He will bring on you all the diseases of Egypt that you dreaded, and they will cling to you. The Lord will also bring you every kind of sickness and disaster not recorded in this book of law until you are destroyed. You who were as numerous as the stars in the sky will be left but few in number because you did not obey the Lord your God. Just as it pleased the Lord to make you prosper and increase in number, so it will please him to ruin and destroy you. You will be uprooted from the land you are entering to possess. So this says right here that if they piss him off, then he will bring ruin and destroy them all the way down to the last dwindling numbers, and it will please him to do so. The apologetics for this is that, well, God likes justice and God likes punishing sin, but he doesn't take pleasure in hurting people. He doesn't take pleasure in wickedness, even though God also says that he is the creator of all things, good and all the evils. And it says right here that it would bring him pleasure to bring ruin and crush these people. All right. And then we have Jesus come along later, who doesn't make this any better. All right. In Matthew 5, verse 18, he says, this is Jesus says, for I truly tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least spoken of a pen will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. So the Levitical law, the stuff that's in Deuteronomy that people are like, oh, Jesus came to get rid of. No, he didn't. Jesus also really introduces the concept of hell. He's often referring to as Gehenna. All right. And he says several times there's unquenchable fire there. It'll be like a fiery furnace. You can just Google Jesus like quoting those terms. You'll find it. He also introduces the idea of thought crime. So if we just pull up once again, go to Matthew 5 and scroll down to chapter 27. All right, talking about adultery. This is quoting Jesus. You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery, but I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye cause you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand cause you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your body to go into hell. I don't know about you, but I've not met many like one-eyed Christians or one-handed Christians, but Jesus is pretty explicit here. And this is supposed to be the exact same God once again, that's killed all these children, drowned all these people, gives people plagues, says he's responsible for natural disasters, all of this stuff. And we're supposed to take it serious that like, oh, if you even look at a woman with lust in your heart, then you've already committed that sin. You've already slept with her, even though it was just a thought that occurred to you. All right. Shane says, discussing this with your very Christian uncle, point out how unfair and unjust it is that you're punished with sin when you didn't eat the fruit. He countered that there are consequences to actions that impact future generations. You agreed and point out that that isn't fair either. But in your model, life isn't fair because there's no God. If there's a God, then he's a reason life isn't fair, contradicting the idea that he is a fair God. He never resolved that contradiction. Oh, 100%. And all of their standards for God and going against like, LGBT people or anti-miscegenation, stuff like that, it's all hypocritical from the top down. Even their stance on abortion. which go to Numbers 5 and then go to verses 11 through 31. This is the test for an unfaithful wife. I'm not going to read the entire thing. I'm just going to give you a nutshell. What this verse is saying is that if there is a man who suspects that his wife has been unfaithful, he can take her before a priest, accuse her of being unfaithful, and the priest will essentially create a bitter liquid. And he's using different herbs and stuff to do it. And if she drinks the bitter water and nothing happens, then she's innocent and her husband can be relieved. However, if her stomach swells and she loses the child, then then the child was from another man, and the wife is guilty of cheating. Okay, so you're saying that this is a priest that's making a liquid that induces a miscarriage because the husband just decides to accuse her of cheating, and that's fine? So God definitely is not against abortion, And if you want to say, well, this is an induced miscarriage that results in the death of the fetus, I feel like most Christians, that's what they mean when they say abortion. This is not even getting into the whole thing about the wife sleeping with man and then bringing them before the elders, right? So this would be a way to test a woman's virginity. So this is going to be in Deuteronomy 17, and literally, it's saying that if a man accuses his wife of not being a virgin when he slept with her, there's essentially a bed sheet that they were supposed to have slept on. They're supposed to bring it before the elders and display it. And if there is blood on the sheet from their first night of being together, they would say, oh, she's a virgin. If there is not blood on the sheet when it's produced, they would say that she's not a virgin and she's made herself like a whore or whatever before all of Israel, and she is to be murdered. Nothing happens to the husband either way, right? I think he pays some shillings to her if he's lying, but she has to die if there's no blood on it. Except that we know that something like 40% of women do not bleed their first time. The hymen, which is what they're essentially looking for, can be ruptured by other things, and sometimes women don't have hymens, and sometimes there's no blood. So why would this be a test that was approved by God when it would lead to roughly 40% of all women being innocent also being executed? And the last thing that I want to touch on, as far as just pointing stuff out in the Bible, how old was the Virgin Mary when God impregnated her? The best estimates are that Mary, this is from scholars, would have been between 12 and 16 years old. And they're saying that the most likely would have been 15 or 16. But the issue is, we know that when most ancient Israelites got married, there'd be a 1-year waiting period before they ended up actually doing the deed. So they'd be married, but there'd be a 1-year period where they're married, but it's an engagement period before they go and actually consummate the marriage. And because of that, we can look historically, and the reason why they say 12 to 16 was because most of these women as girls were married between 12 and 13 before they consummate their marriage a year later. If Joseph had married her and just had not consummated the marriage yet, then we would know that she's going to be between 12 and 14 when she gets pregnant. And that's why they're saying she's between 15 and 16 when she actually gives birth to Jesus. So this is God, the creator of the universe and the moral arbiter of everything, that you want me to believe all goodness and ethical frameworks come from. And he's impregnating a young teenager. I'm sorry. This is a farce of a moral character to me. You're never going to be able to convince me that morality comes from this heinous creature. All right? It's just utterly ridiculous. And Christians will say that they're persecuted in society. In fact, of course, there's the Kash Patel is like, oh, we're looking for like anti-Christian Americans. Like, if you're anti-Christian, you must be like a radical extremist terrorist type. That's what Kash has said. And they literally passed an executive order to deal with this. This is like a very serious thing in our country. And they have nearly every politician in my country, one of those powerful countries in the world, call themselves Christians. Laws favor Christians all the time. There are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of churches here. Pastors, reverends, and all these people typically hold power within their communities. They're often treated with positions of power and respect. They get preferential treatment all the time. They're able to get out of, they used to be able to get out of donating blood or getting blood transfusions for religious reasons. And very often politicians talk all the time about how one of the most protected amendments and one of the most important amendments is the freedom of religion, which is in the First Amendment, but it's very often been interpreted as giving Christianity preferential treatment. You have people that will lie and say that our country was founded as a Christian nation when it wasn't. But there are very, very influential, very powerful, wealthy people that have mega churches across this country, and they literally buy our elections, or they pay to put people in. They're called like they're like the moral bloc, and they wield an enormous amount of power over culture, over political influence, and with some of them actually going into politics themselves. Trump has spiritual advisors. That's the president, who's supposed to be a Christian as well. Like, the idea that Christians are persecuted in this country is farcical. It is stupid on its face. It is laughably absurd. Christians hold an inordinate amount of power in this country. And a lot of times when you look at blue laws that forbid the sale of alcohol on Sundays in America, the counties that are doing that, they're doing it based on Christian, what they believe is Christian doctrine. When you look at anti-sodomy laws, the sodomy laws, it's in the name sodomy, Saddam, right? They think that, in Sodom and Gomorrah, they were, all having gay sex or something. Therefore, you can't have gay marriage. And if you have gay sex, you should be prosecuted. Kim Davis was a county clerk that was refusing to issue marriage licenses because she said that it interfered with her religious faith, her religious beliefs, which was Christianity. And not only would she not sign the licenses that her position required her to issue, but she said that no one else in her office was allowed to sign them either. So even if there were non-Christians working in her office that would be fine with signing them, they weren't allowed to sign it either because of her beliefs. And this is a common theme where Christians will try and forcibly bend society to their religious mores. When we look at where do their religious values come from, the ones that are all divine command theory, you can see how terrible this God is. This is a joke. What mass murdering, genocidal, disease spreading piece of shit that drowned the entire world, killed all these puppies and kittens, killed all these children, cursed mankind just because he's throws a hissy fit, has killed people for touching the Ark of the Covenant, murdered kids because they burned the wrong incense, murdered kids because they made fun of somebody for being bald. We're supposed to think for 2 seconds that if this God actually existed, that he'd be against Epstein and the Epstein and what happened in the Epstein files? No. The Epstein files would be small potatoes compared to this God if this God actually existed. This God would be masterminding all of it, like would clearly be taking enjoyment in all of this stuff. I don't understand why Christians think that we should take them serious whatsoever about Christian ethics or Christian morality. Meanwhile, they're going to say that people like me, for being queer, are debaucherous and we deserve like the fires of hell because we go against their God's decrees by even existing. Now, maybe you're a progressive Christian and you don't share those same values with other like evangelicals or whatever. But at the end of the day, people like me have been oppressed in this country and many others as part of this Christian persecution. And it's Christian persecution on atheists, on queer people, on pagans, right? Y'all have been doing this for like hundreds of years. And it is a joke to me, and it's pathetic that you want to pretend that Christianity is under attack in any way, shape, or form because you can't force the 10 Commandments to be in every single classroom, because you cannot force other people's kids to say prayers to your stupid fucking God. Now, I don't think that Christians should be persecuted either, but it seems very much that those thoughts, that principle doesn't go both ways for y'all. It seems that y'all are fine persecuting people. You are fine denying people access to healthcare, to trans care, to abortion care, as long as you claim that it goes against the things that your God would want, when your God is clearly the worst possible standard that we could set for morality in existence. Those are my initial thoughts on this deity and this farcical system that you call ethics for your Christian ethics. Now, if you get your ethics from somewhere else, if you have like secular values and you also just happen to be a Christian and you're not trying to push this Levitical biblical law onto other people, then you're not the person I'm talking to and you're not the person that I'm criticizing. But if you think that like the Christian Bible is where we ought get our laws from, if you think that this country was founded as a Christian nation and it should remain a Christian nation, then I'm talking about you. If you think that all ethics come from God, if morality comes from God, and that you can't have ethics if you are not a Christian, then I'm also talking to you. And I think that your position is laughably absurd. And if you think that I'm wrong, you can comment down in the video and let me know what I got wrong. But that's going to close out the segment on Christian ethics and Christian morality. If y'all have anything else to say, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to start wrapping up this stream because it's been going on over 3 hours at this point, and I'm getting pretty tired. I'll wait a couple of moments before closing it out otherwise, but I cannot for the life of me understand where these Christians like think that they have a moral high ground here. It's just utterly ridiculous. But otherwise, that will wrap everything up. And thank you all for being with us. I hope you enjoyed the stream. If you got any entertainment out of it, or if you got any insight into anything, please like the stream and comment on it. And I will see you next time. Bye.